The appearance of Pirate Gundam surprised Peter Quill. He didn't expect that his Earth fellow would follow him secretly because he was worried about him. Craft. Watch out. Ego is. Before Mr. Xingju's words were finished, the spaceship he and Yongdu were on was kicked away by the Pirate Gundam. Get in the way. The disgusting voice of Craft from the communication made Peter Quill know that he was passionate. Kicking away the spacecraft that affected his performance, Craft manipulated the Pirate Gundam to pounce on the giant figure with blue light in front of him. The lightsaber in his hand swung quickly, cutting Ego into several segments. This is useless, it's just the duplication of the master, and it doesn't make any sense to destroy him. The praying mantis woman who had boarded the spaceship with Xingju whispered. What does it matter, let him drag Ego here, let's leave quickly. I didn't know that Ego's ambitions were not so much courage, and he had to flee the planet while driving the spacecraft. No. Xingju stopped Yongdu and quickly explained Ege's matter to him. So if you don't get rid of him, our world will be swallowed up by him sooner or later. Then you come and tell me, with just a few of us, how do you deal with a planet and God? Yongdu refuted Peter Quill loudly, while continuing to control the spacecraft to escape outside. He has no interest in being a savior. After escaping, he will spread this information and let ability be stronger to solve it. This is in line with their predator's behavior. However, Igor will not let Peter Quill, the only battery that inherits his own genes, leave. On the one hand, he has turned upside down in the form of the blue giant of light in the Craft Pirate Gundam, while on the other side he controls countless huge amounts of light tentacles rolled towards Yongdu's spacecraft. Although Yongdu's little spaceship is also equipped with some weapons, it is not very useful to face those overwhelming, interrupted blue tentacles that can regenerate. If it weren't for Craft's involvement with Igor's attention on the other side, it was shot down long ago. However, the current situation is not better there. Under the control of Yongdu and Xingju, although the spacecraft barely survived these tentacles, it is very difficult to break through them and escape the planet. Yongdu. Can't you ask others to help too? Xingju yelled loudly, but his eyes focused on the blue tentacles that covered the sky in front of him, manipulating the spacecraft to shuttle in the gap between them. If you don't always monopolize their rewards, I think they will be happy to help. He gave Peter Quill a grimace, and Yongdu said to him. They want to eat me. What if you take some of their money? That's just a joke. Quill, surprised. Is it okay to be a joke? Xingju widened his eyes incredibly and looked at Yongdu, who said this casually. The childhood shadow that has always scared him for fear of not being able to sleep, now telling him is just a joke. I've always taken it seriously. Be careful, Quill. However, Xingju's brief distraction caused them to fall into a crisis in an instant. A blue tentacle seized the opportunity and entangled their spaceship tightly, and the other tentacles also rolled over. Yongdu's spacecraft made a horrible metal twisting sound, and the internal instruments began to flicker, and several electric sparks popped out from time to time. Damn it. Let's get out of here quickly. Yongdu made a decisive decision and activated the emergency escape device. A hole was opened on the floor under all the seats, and the three people sitting in their respective positions were thrown out of the spacecraft together with the chairs. Where is Ego's spacecraft? After leaving the spaceship, Xingju found the mantis girl for the first time and asked in a hurry. The master's spaceship is also part of his body, you can't control it even if you get it. Holding her head dizzy because of the sudden fall, the praying mantis female replied weakly. Surprised. Can we only count on the unreliable Kid Craft? Xingju glanced at the pirate Gundam flying up and down in the distance. After eliminating Yongdu's spacecraft, Ego stopped distracting from the Star-Lord's side. Anyway, they had lost the spacecraft, which was completely in his pocket, so Ego put all his thoughts into dealing with him. The pirate is up to the top. As a result, Craft, who could have played back and forth with Eagle's giant of light, suddenly found that the strength and speed of the blue giant had increased dramatically, and the number of those annoying tentacles had also increased. Many. Tisk. Looks like Xingju is already cold. Craft grumbled, controlling the pirate Gundam to take out a crossbow-shaped beam gun, and squeezing the trigger at the constantly tentacles. Rows of beams shot out from the bird screen, shattering crossbow, and all nearby tentacles were shot. It broke into 2 paragraphs. Craft. Ego's body is the planet under his feet. It doesn't make any sense to defeat that blue giant. Peter Quill's voice suddenly rang from the communicator, telling what Craft already knew. He has a core or brain in the interior of this planet. Only by destroying it can I defeat Ego. Well said, but it makes no sense. Craft pulled the trigger of the sparrow screen shattering crossbow with one hand, and with the other hand swung the Muramasa Kazun, assembled with 14 beam knives, to clear the endless tentacles around him. The Gundam he drove was built on the model of the Pirate Gundam X1 full cloth. There were a lot of weapons and equipment on his body, but none of them were used to cause large-scale destruction. However, even if it is a Flying Wing Zero with super firepower, or a body such as the GP-02 equipped with a nuclear warhead, at best, it will only bomb the surface of the planet once and penetrate the Earth's core or something that is wishful thinking. Where's your ship? There are so many robots in Ganakori, let them help. Peter Quill continued to roar loudly in the communicator. How do you do that? Kraft rebuffed, I won't have to play when they come. What am I? Peter Quill was going crazy when he heard this. At this time, Kraft still wanted to play. Well, first try if you can get in. Kraft ignored Shingju's endless chatter, looked down at the ground, and then put away the Sparrow screen-crushing crossbow in his hand. When Pirate Gundam's right arm stretched out again from under the mechanical cloak, the entire forearm part had become a huge amounts of drill. Swinging the Muramasa Mad Knife again to force the blue tentacles back, the Pirate Gundam raised his right arm and slammed the drill bit into the ground fiercely. If possible, Kraft definitely wants to replicate the magical faces of the spiral race in the dream world, but it is a pity that it involves a mysterious spiral force, which is obviously not in the Marvel world. Kraft is very upset about this. Why do we have no spiral force? Obviously human DNA is a spiral structure. It's still 2 spins. Although it is impossible to replicate the face perfectly, it is still no problem to install a drill bit for your Gundam, just as one of the drivers of the Geta robot said. The drill is a man's romance. When Igo saw Kraft driving the robot into the ground, he panicked. In the previous fight with Kraft, Igo has already deeply understood how difficult this robot with the characteristics of Earth pirates is. If he breaks into the core of the planet, he will definitely not be able to keep his old life. So Igo not only controlled the blue tentacles to stop Kraft, but also mobilized the soil of the entire planet, squeezing the Pirate Gundam, which was going downward. The fluorescent green particles formed a shield to protect the Pirate Gundam inside, blocking all the sand and gravel from the surrounding area, but the blue light tentacles were not so easy to deal with, entangled the Pirate Gundam to prevent it from continuing to the ground. The position of the nucleus rushes forward. What's that system called? Seeing that his actions were blocked by Eagle's light tentacles, Kraft held the thruster lever beside him and pushed it directly to the top. Transam. The whole body of Pirate Gundam glowed with a bright red light, and the number of particles ejected from the 4GN solar furnaces on the back also increased several times in an instant. In addition to the Trans-Am system that comes with the GN solar furnace, Kraft immediately launched the Lambda driver system on board, and according to the usual practice, came a line to give himself a psychological hint. My drill, but the drill that breaks through the sky. With the blessing of the 2 black technology systems, the Pirate Gundam rushed to the ground in an unstoppable posture. All obstacles in front of Kraft were pierced by the Pirate Gundam's right-hand drill, and the light tentacles that had been entwined with it before were also abruptly torn away or even torn off because of the huge amounts of propulsion force. Do not. Igor roared, constantly controlling the various hard materials on this planet to gather in front of the Pirate Gundam, and at the same time he mobilized the power in his body to attack Kraft. The effect of this is very obvious. After Kraft rushed forward for a certain distance, the speed began to slow down, and the light tentacles took the opportunity to wrap up. After the Pirate Gundam continued to advance for a certain distance, it finally stopped. After re-limiting Pirate Gundam's ability, those tentacles turned into spears and stabbed Kraft. Although Yigo's attack methods were a little lacking, he was considered a god at any rate. After an attack, the Pirate Gundam not only broke the outer energy shield, but the body also became scarred. Well, it looks like this is the limit of Pirate Gundam. Kraft, who can no longer move on, is quite satisfied. As a planetary incarnation, Yigo can force Yigo to stop himself with all his strength by relying on the Pirate Gundam. This situation has exceeded expectations. This also shows that Kraft's current technology should be sufficient to deal with Thanos' high-end combat power. Next, it only needs to spend some time on rioting to defend against Thanos' army. Seeing that the Pirate Gundam couldn't deal with Igor, Kraft didn't intend to continue rushing down. After all, the Pirate Gundam could not be mass-produced, and it was not easy for him to knock one out by himself. While the time for Trans-Am was not over, Kraft waved the drill in his hand and the Muramasa Kazakh, cutting off the tentacles of light entwined with him, and then turned his head and flew upwards. Ego couldn't ask for it, not only did not stop, but took the initiative to move away from the previously closed ground, keeping the Pirate Gundam away from his true body. When the scarred craft rushed out of the ground, Xingju and Yongdu were desperate. Just now they tried to contact the predators in outer space, but not only did they not send anyone to rescue them, but they also fought inwardly. The two sides who support Yongdu and those who oppose Xingju are in a stalemate in the spacecraft, and there is no time to take care of them. It's all your fault. Quill. Now you blame me again. If you didn't scare me back then, how could I be so unkind to them? At this critical moment, Xingju and Yongdu couldn't help but quarrel with each other until a scarred pirate Gundam came out of the ground. Maybe I have a way. At this moment, the praying mantis woman weakly interrupted. My ability can make Igo fall asleep, but the premise is not to irritate him too much. If the robot can move a little bit quieter, there is a chance to get to the center of the Earth. Surprised. Why didn't you say it earlier? Peter Quill slapped the praying mantis on the shoulder, then took out the communicator and started contacting Kraft. What's the matter? Didn't you see that I was busy? Kraft said impatiently while swinging the Muramasa wild knife. After Kraft returned to the ground, Igor regained control of the tentacles of light and wrapped the pirate Gundam, and based on his previous experience, used the hard ores on this planet to form a huge amounts of body, and stopped the pirate Gundam. In front of. We have a way to deal with Ego. Xingju didn't care about Kraft's unfriendly tone, and quickly explained Mantis Girl's plan. Didn't I say? I haven't had enough of it yet. Kraft avoided Eagle's attack by a few dodges, and then handed the pirate Gundam to Angela to control, and he activated the emergency escape device and bounced out of it. While Angela controlled the pirate Gundam to fly back to the cross, Kraft, who was ejected, raised his left hand high in the air. Come on. Fearless giant. With the burst of light from the arm of Kraft's wrist, 5 huge amounts of mechanical parts emerged from the void, and then quickly expanded into different parts, grouped together with Kraft as the center. A robot that was a little smaller than the pirate Gundam and looked a little naive appeared in front of Ego's eyes. The difference between the shape of the fearless giant and the pirate Gundam is obvious. From the perspective of the head-to-body ratio and the design, the fearless giant is more like a children's toy without its file size. There is even a schoolbag-style design behind it, which has various functions such as weapon storage, energy tank, ejector and so on. Kraft is not dissatisfied with the look of the fearless giant. Bo Taijun drives with a sense of taste, and naturally he doesn't care much about driving the fearless giant. His only dissatisfaction is that no matter how you transform the fearless giant, the life of this guy is only 3 minutes, even if Kraft prepares a bunch of spare energy for it. Are you Ultraman? However, even if the fearless giant has such problems, its strength is beyond doubt. Then, let's start the second round. Shooting a missile to blow up the tentacles of light chasing after him, Kraft exclaimed in high spirits. Knowing that none of the other attacks of the fearless giant could cause any substantial damage to Igor, Kraft didn't plan to do so many bells and whistles, and he would decide the outcome with a single blow. Mini Warrior. The bag-shaped part of the back was opened, and 5 small robots flew out, and they quickly formed a slightly hideous arm in front of the fearless giant. Kraft controlled the fearless giant to stretch out his hands, the arm in front of him opened, and the left hand of the fearless giant was wrapped in, and then the 2 palms merged to form a calyx-like shape and aimed at the planet below. The Millennium Emperor. This is the strongest attack that the fearless giant can use, but after using this trick, the fearless giant is basically scrapped. The chest particle cannon on the Kraft Dreamland armor also integrates part of its technology, but due to issues such as energy and endurance, it is much weaker than the fearless giant's Millennium Emperor in terms of damage. But even so, Kraft used the chest particle cannon to wipe out the entire Hydra base, and it can be imagined as a stronger Millennium Emperor. Huge amounts of beams of light ejected from the hands of the fearless giant, and hit the ground with the power to destroy everything. Ego, who had turned into an ore giant, let out a roar, and controlled his body to rush to the front of the beam of light. The body of the ore giant was not able to withstand the Millennium Emperor for long, and was soon annihilated by it, but at the moment Ego had already mobilized all the light on this planet and confronted it before the Millennium Emperor. The shockwave generated when the two contended blows everything nearby. The stars and others in the distance only saw the overwhelming sand and gravel trees, and they were scared to find a cave to hide, until outside. The sound of cracking stopped before poking out his head cautiously. The confrontation between Ego and the fearless giant continues. The 2 pillars of light, one white and one blue, stand like a sword through the sky. At the intersection of the two, a large amount of land is lifted up, creating a huge amounts of semicircular potholes. Surprised. It turns out that Kraft is so powerful. Even looking at the 2 beams of light in the stalemate from a distance, Peter Quill opened his mouth wide. When Kraft said that he hadn't played enough, he still felt that the kid didn't know the severity, but now he doesn't. Kind of thought. I wanted to ask before, Quill. What's the matter with your strange mantra? Probably seeing that there is the power to fight against Eagle, Yongdu is no longer so anxious, and has free time to find Xingju to solve his puzzles. It's more complicated to say. Peter Quill's expression was a little complicated, and then he waved his hand. It's not an important thing anyway, don't care too much. The top priority is to solve Igo's problem, and Peter Quill looks at the praying mantis girl aside. Do you have a way to put Igo to sleep now? Even if he is stunned for a while. The current situation is a stalemate between Kraft and Eagle. If you can divide Eagle's heart slightly, then Kraft will definitely win against Poland. No, the praying mantis shook her head and pointed to Ego, who was facing Bo in the distance. Ego has concentrated all his power there, and I can no longer influence him through the energy network of this planet. The movement caused by the two to Bo Shi was too great, and the mantis girl could not get close to them at all. The energy of this planet. Peter Quill suddenly flashed, yes, that's it. Eagle once taught himself how to control the light in this planet, and Xingju also tried and succeeded. Putting his hands in front of him, Peter Quill slowly closed his eyes. Concentrate. Let your thoughts enter the center of the planet under your feet, and feel the light inside. Different from the first perception, the light that was ubiquitous on this planet before, at the moment all gathered on the light man who barely had a personal shape in the distance. There is only one energy channel extending all the way down the soul plate of that light man's feet, linking to the core in the middle of the earth. After successfully communicating the light of this planet, Peter Quill hesitated for a while, and then exhausted all his mental power, and violently tipped on the only energy channel. Under this pull, the connection between Yigo's avatar and the core ontology was cut off for less than half a second. Xingju's control of light is far inferior to Yigo. If it is normal, he can't interfere with Yigo at all, but now Yigo is focusing on dealing with Kraft, so he was caught off guard by Xingju. Damn it. Feeling the sudden interruption of the energy transmission in his body, the light man that Igo transformed into was almost unable to maintain his form in a panic. Although he quickly reconnected to the core of the planet, the Millennium Emperor of the Fearless Giant had already taken this opportunity to overwhelm Ego's blue beam of light, and blasted him fiercely. The Millennium Emperor did not produce any violent explosions after hitting the ground. The white beam of light continued to go all the way down after defeating Ego's lightman, blasting towards the center of the planet. Ego, who lost to the wave, did not wait to die. After reconnecting to the core, he did not have time to launch another energy to fight Kraft against the wave. He could only mobilize all the energy and controllable matter to block the front of the Millennium Emperor. The energy accumulated over millions of years is spent on it. The white beam of light finally stopped, and the Millennium Monarch blasted a bottomless pit on this planet. The price paid was that the Fearless Giant that Kraft piloted was completely scrapped, and most of his body was spread by the Millennium Emperor. The high temperature came out and melted. That is to say, Kraft has enough toys to withstand his waste, but it still makes Kraft a little distressed to scrap a fearless giant like this. It takes him a lot of time to build such a fearless giant. Silently regretting the abandoned fearless giant in her heart, Kraft stretched out his hand and pulled the pull ring hanging from the top, opened the still good school bag behind the fearless giant, and ejected the Kraft inside. Turning on the floating device to stabilize his figure, Kraft clicked twice behind his ear, and a pair of Dragon Ball World combat power detectors. The detector hung on his ears in an instant. Using the probe to search around, Kraft quickly found Xingju and the others. You actually solved Igo. Are you really from the Earth like Quill? When Kraft landed in front of the three of Xingju, Yongdu asked with a face full of inconceivability. Who said I solve Ego? Kraft curled his lips. In the end, the Millennium Emperor was blocked by Igor. The key is the issue of endurance. If I can persist for another 20 or 30 seconds, then Igor will really be killed by him if he is not sure. It's a pity that the endurance problem of the fearless giant seems to belong to the setting. 3 minutes is quite a second, but it can't be more than 1 second. Shocked. Igo is not dead. Xingju quickly sank his heart to feel the light of this planet. Although it looked a little weaker than before, the light did not disappear and was rapidly recovering. At the same time, a part of it was gathering towards them. I definitely didn't die, Peter. The blue rays of light gathered, and Eagle regained his old man's appearance when he first appeared. I am a god. How could I die so easily? With a fierce look, Eagle swept across the faces of Xingju and others, and finally looked at the only stranger Kraft. Are you the driver of the robot just now? I will give you a chance to be loyal to me, and I will not blame the previous things. Allegiance to you. Then I have to test whether you are worthy of allegiance. Kraft rubbed his chin and replied casually, how do you want to test? That is. Kraft snapped his fingers, and a petite figure suddenly fell from the sky, and then landed steadily on the ground. How are you? After landing, Aurelie smiled and called roar from Ego. Kraft grinned, showing a gleeful smile, making Eagle's heart alarm bells loudly. That's. Take my sister's punch first. What are you talking about? Before Peter Quill could recover from Aurelie's fall from the sky unscathed, he heard Kraft's joke-like condition. Although Aurelie has great strength, Igo is a planet. On the other side, Igo also felt a burst of anger. Are you kidding me? Aurelie's appearance is too confusing, and Ego doesn't think her punch can have much power. In addition, he also felt heart palpitations because of Kraft's mysterious appearance, feeling embarrassed. Don't underestimate my sister, she is very strong. Kraft touched Aurelie's little head and sighed pretendingly. Haha. I was praised by my brother. Aurelie raised her hands and smiled happily. Enough. I'm not interested in messing around with you anymore. Give me all to die. The playful attitude of the two brothers and sisters made Igo completely rage. He no longer considered the matter of including Kraft under his command. He manipulated several huge amounts of blue light tentacles to break through the ground, teeth and claws behind him. Wiggling. Ouch. Not handsome at all. Aurelie looked at the tentacles that were useless except for color and light effects, and commented. You guys don't make a fuss. Kraft, do you have any other means? Hurry up and use it. Peter Quill took out the elemental gun and repeatedly pulled the trigger at Igor, but was easily blocked by those tentacles, and couldn't help but shout at Kraft and Aurelie, who were still criticizing those tentacles. My method is Aurelie. Kraft shrugged, then patted Aurelie's head. I will leave it to you, Aurelie. Yes. Aurelie promised vigorously, then squatted down, raised his small fist, and tapped it gently against the ground. Crack it. A small crack appeared under Aurelie's fist, and then quickly spread to both sides. Crack. Click. Click. The continuous and constantly crisp sound went along the two ends of the crack in two opposite directions. In the incredible eyes of a group of people, the planet is the body of Ego, under this punch, forcibly split into two. Half. What have you done? Although the planet was split into two halves, Ego's core was not completely destroyed, which is probably related to the setting of Aurelie's inability to easily fight Deadman. But even so, he has actually been hit hard, and the loss of energy within the body makes his avatar unstable, which looks like a video communication with poor signal. But at the moment, Igo didn't care about his duplication anymore. He roared at Kraft in fright. As you can see, my sister gave you a punch. Kraft calmly pointed to Aurelie, who was squatting on the ground, and happily, I said, Aurelie is very strong. This is too much. Peter Quill on the side couldn't help but spit out loudly. Shooting the planet in half with one punch, is this something normal humans can do? Kraft glanced at Xing-Ju and ignored him, but jumped into the crack made by Aurelie, and Aurelie followed suit. Ha 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 ha. Aurelie's cheerful laughter came out from the crack, making Ego, who was desperate, suddenly come back to his senses. Oops. Ego's body turned into blue light and penetrated into the ground, and then rushed to his core position frantically. Igor's movement speed in his body is definitely much faster than Kraft's free fall speed, so after he reaches his core part, he has plenty of time to shape his body and concentrate him. The force still dissipating. As for mobilizing nearby sand, gravel and soil to reclose the planet, or to prevent Kraft and Aurelie who are falling, Igo is absolutely afraid. Who knew that the little girl named Aurelie gave another punch, and her already wounded core couldn't hold it? When Igo was standing by, Kraft and Aurelie also fell to this depth. Aurelie did not slow down at all, and even did a few forward rolls in midair and then dropped his legs straight in front of the core. On a rock not far away. Full marks. Aurelie, who put on a gymnast to finish the action, laughed contentedly. When Kraft was about to arrive, he turned on the anti-gravity device on his body, and Shiren fell from above and landed beside Aurelie. Brother, look. It's a big brain. Aurelie stopped laughing, but still kept her smile pointing towards Ego's core. The core of Ego is a white brain glowing with blue light, a brain that is similar to a human brain, that is, a little bigger, about 2 to 3 meters tall. Although I really want to vomit why a god who existed millions of years ago has a brain similar to humans, Kraft thought for a while. The Marvel world he is in is actually a product of some human fantasy. It feels like there is nothing surprising. What else do you want to do? Igo looked at Kraft and Aurelie in horror. Well, it was Aurelie mainly. I will give you a chance to be loyal to me, and I will not blame the past, how about it? Kraft smiled hippily and returned Igo's previous solicitation. Don't think about it. I'm a god. Igor shouted at Kraft angrily, but did not dare to manipulate the surrounding energy to attack him and Aurelie. Really? That's a shame. Kraft patted Alale next to him, pointed to the giant brain in front of him, and said, Come on, Alale, tell that thing roar. Wait a minute. Can't you just discuss it? When he saw Aurelie clenched his fists and raised his chest, and leaned back slightly to make an inhalation movement, Igo immediately persuaded. Kraft's operation of not playing cards according to the routine made Igo very frustrated. Didn't he listen to his own terms? Although he, as a god, looked down on other lives at all, and wanted to devour all the planets to achieve eternity, but that was because Igo had never suffered a fatal threat. But when Igo found out that someone could easily destroy himself, he counseled him even faster than a hamster. Nothing to discuss, you can't beat Aurelie anyway. The confident Kraft curled his lips. He conquered Eagle. First, he wanted to study what kind of energy his so-called light is, and second, he wanted to put his core in the space base he was still building. With the help of Yigo, I must be able to complete the transformation of Aurelie's tentative name faster. In fact, if it hadn't been a short time since the project there had already started, Kraft had also considered whether or not to transform the Eagle Star altogether. I surrender, the aggrieved Eagle said unwillingly that he didn't want to die more than being someone else's. As for things like swallowing other planets to reach eternity, does it still make sense to this day? Isn't it about the little girl named Aurelie throwing a few more punches? Inside the huge black space battleship, the accuser Ronan was sitting on his throne, listening to the reports of his subordinates. According to the information we have found, the Predators have taken the mission of taking the cosmic spiritual ball from the broker in Shandel, and they have indeed reached the Morag star. Ronan knelt on one knee and spoke methodically. However, in addition to the Predators, there were also recently well-known cosmic pirates. In addition, the group of Predators did not go to Shandel to hand over the mission to the brokers, so it can basically be concluded that the cosmic spirit ball should have fallen into the cosmic sea, in the hands of the thief. Cosmic pirates. I've heard of them, they are still a little bit powerful to make the Shia Empire retreat. Ronan lightly nodded his forehead with his fingers. Although he said compliments, his tone was casual. Then it's up to me to bring back the universe spirit ball. A blue-skinned female reformer next to her stood up and offered herself. Leave it to me, you know, my mission has never failed. Seeing that Nebula wanted to intervene, the green-skinned Gamora also stepped forward. She has already learned from other sources that besides Thanos, the famous collector is also spending a lot of money to find the cosmic spiritual ball. Therefore, Gamora intends to obtain the universe spirit orb, sell it to Collector, and then use the money to escape Thanos' control. I brought it up first. Nebula glared at her nominal sister. She has always been at odds with Gamora, not to mention that Gamora now wants to rob her of her mission. Gamora did not argue with Nebula, but looked at Ronan on the high seat. She believed that Ronan would choose herself, because compared to Nebula, Gamora was more famous and stronger. Then, leave it to you. Ronan did choose Gamora, and gave her the task of capturing the cosmic spiritual ball. Although Nebula was not angry, he did not have the guts to disobey Ronan, so he could only retreat silently, staring at Gamora and gritting his teeth secretly. At this time, Kraft didn't know that he had been targeted by Thanos' forces. He was sending Yigo's core through the portal to Aurelie Star and placing it on it. Although Igor has already admitted, Kraft couldn't believe him so easily, so Kraft made a limiter on Igor's body. If Igor dared to make any small movements, the limiter would be straightforward. Blew his body to ashes. Igo didn't complain too much about this. As a prisoner, it was normal to be chained. And he didn't dare to complain. Even without this limiter, he would only be the difference between one punch or two punches when facing Aurelie. All of Igo's spirit and grand destiny had long been in Aurelie's youth. Smoke flew out under the fist. Therefore, after being placed inside the Aurelies by Kraft, Igo didn't think about it carefully, but worked tirelessly to build the Aurelies with the Haro. With the help of the core of the planet Igo, the construction of Alales has definitely gone smoothly. Even the design that I just wanted to carve Alale's face on the planet has become a direct sculpting of the planet. The shape of Aurelie's head. Because Kraft and others all ran back to Aurelies to build a space base, this caused Gamora and Ronan's subordinates to search outside for a long time and failed to find them, so Gamora can only start from the Predator. Ends. And the first target to be contacted, Gamora naturally chose Peter Quill. the mothership that once boarded Death Vanguard, and a man who was suspected to be from the same planet as the group of cosmic pirates. "Hello. Are you interested in having a drink together?" Gamora found Peter Quill in a bar, and she took the initiative to approach him. "Definitely no problem, ma'am." Xingju's eyes lit up when he saw Gamora, and smiled and raised the wine glass in her hand. Peter Quill, who grew up in a bunch of strange aliens, has a natural aesthetic that is different from ordinary Earthlings. Not to mention that Gamora is just a little greener, even if it is an alien girl with insect characteristics. Hooked up. In this respect, Peter Quill is actually quite similar to Ego. Both parties took their respective cautious thoughts while drinking and chatting. With Gamora's active cooperation, Xingju began to brag about his experience in the Predator team. Thrilling and exciting space adventures. This kind of topic is very popular among these interstellar girls. The alien girls won by Xingju are not one or two, so he is very confident that he can attract this seemingly wild, green-skinned girl. Sure enough, Gamora's performance was the same as those of the girls he had hooked up before. Not only did he listen to his attention, he still asked him a few words to puff him, which made Xingju even more convincing when he was bragging. It's just that Xingju has been talking about it for a long time, but has never mentioned the topic of cosmic pirates, which made Gamora gradually become impatient, so she decided to take the initiative. "By the way, I wonder if you have heard of the most famous group of cosmic pirates recently?" Gamora tucked her hair off and asked casually. Peter Quill, who was still spitting, closed his mouth instantly and looked at Gamora with a strange expression. What's wrong?" Gamora asked unclearly. "So you are here to inquire about the news." Peter Quill collapsed his shoulders in frustration. Although he didn't spread the information of Kraft and others, the pink girl with him, Barrett, consciously or unconsciously told her about her experience on the Cross Pioneer. This led to someone coming to Xingju to inquire about Death Vanguard's intelligence from time to time. If it was Peter Quill who had experienced the Ego incident, or the Aureli's bare-handed star-breaking incident, Peter Quill, using this topic to fish girls or sell money, would definitely not have any psychological barriers. But now, he didn't dare to disclose Kraft's information at will, for fear of being beaten to death by Aureli with a small fist. Seeing that his purpose has been exposed, Gamora no longer pretends to be a little fan, but sternly said to Peter Quill, "Since you have found out, I will tell the truth." Gamora pursed her lips, making a fierce and sad look. "I want to join Death Vanguard and seek revenge from the people of the Shia Empire." Peter Quill's expression was flat and he said to Gamora with his eyes emptied, "I've heard about your reasons 16 times. Gamora was silent for a moment, and suddenly drew a short knife from his waist, then the short knife quickly unfolded into a long knife, and it was placed on Peter Quill's neck. "So, what about this reason?" "Wow." Xingju leaned his head back slightly, moved his neck slightly away from the blade, and then sighed helplessly. "Such a fierce reason, it's the first time I have encountered. Now, tell me where the Death Vanguard is now." Gamora ignored the other alcoholic people who screamed around to watch the excitement, and pressed the long knife in his hand and asked sternly. "Hey, don't be so excited." Peter Quill continued to lean back and raised his neck, clasped his palms and pacified softly. "My neck is very fragile. Stop talking nonsense. The Vanguard of Death will soon be." Gamora was only halfway talking, and I saw Peter Quill suddenly turning his head and closing his eyes, and under the thumb of his raised palm, an inconspicuous little thing was exposed, and this was revealed. A dazzling white light lit up in an instant. "What?" Gamora, who was flashed over, let out a scream together with the other people watching the excitement behind her. Covering her tearful eyes with her free hand, Gamora waved her other knife-holding hand and slashed towards Peter Quill's position. At the moment, Xingju had already taken a quick backslide and pulled away from Gamora, then turned his head and ran out of the bar. As he ran, he shook his hands grinning and grinning. The flash bomb just now wasn't used to release it at close range. Although it didn't have much damage, it also burned his palms red. When Gamora regained his eyesight, Peter Quill had already escaped from the bar, and ran to his Milano. "Don't want to run." Gamora opened her legs and chased Peter Quill quickly. Although Gamora is a female, she has been trained and modified by Thanos since she was a child, and her physical fitness is much higher than that of Peter Quill. Unless Xingju can develop his own genes belonging to Ego, otherwise he and ordinary humans are not much different. So it didn't take long for Gamora to catch up with Peter Quill, but Xingju was not a vegetarian after spending so long in the Predator team. He had been paying attention to the situation of this green-skinned girl who wanted to force him. When Gamora pounced towards Peter Quill from behind, He immediately activated the propellers installed on his feet, and while avoiding Gamora's pounce, he jumped directly onto the roof of the nearby building. Try this. Rua. Shingju took out a small ball from his pocket and threw it down. Boom. The small ball exploded, and a large amount of gray-white gas quickly spread, covering the entire street below. Taking advantage of the opportunity when Gamora was enveloped in smoke bombs, Shingju began to escape again. Unexpectedly, Gamora in the smoke squatted down, kicked his legs hard on the ground, and jumped directly out of the smoke, and landed on the same roof without losing the jumping power of Shingju using the jet. Are you still going to run? At the moment Gamora's long knife has been replaced with a pistol, pointing at Peter Quill, who is preparing to run. Surprised. How did you jump up? Shingju raised his hands again helplessly. This is too unreasonable. I have definitely seen the alien star sire who jumped several stories high, but the race of Gamora is not difficult to recognize. Although the Zehubali star people are brave and good at fighting, they don't have such good physical fitness. But after thinking about the children of Arale, Mr. Shingju had to admit that the physiques of people are different. Stop talking nonsense. Gamora didn't want to overturn the car in Shingju's hands anymore, so he squeezed the trigger and fell him to the ground. Then he took out a pair of handcuffs and cuffed his hands together. If you are still going to run away, it won't be an electric shock bullet next time. Gamora pressed his gun to the back of Peter Quill's head and said viciously. Actually, I didn't tell, I was doing it for your own good. After being captured, Shingju sighed and said that he hadn't worried about what Kraft would be treated by Gamora from the beginning, but he did not dare to disclose their information easily. Because the two little girls, Arale and Angela, are not like the masters who can be reasonable. I hope Kraft can understand me. Compared with the troubles caused by the two little girls later, his own life is more important now. Peter Quill is not a foolish fool. In this case, he can only be obedient. I really don't know where they are now, but I have their contact information. Peter Quill turned his head as far as he could when he was lying on the ground, and said to Gamora who was pressing on his back. So, do you let me go first so that I can contact them for you? Stop playing tricks. Gamora pondered for a moment, stood up from Shingju, released the handcuffs of his hands, and continued to point a gun at his head. If you dare to do anything extra, I will pull the trigger immediately. Don't worry, I don't want to die yet. In order not to stimulate Gamora, Shingju slowed down his movements, slowly got up from the ground, moved his aching body, and took out his communicator. Let me ask first, what do you want to do with them? It has nothing to do with you. You just need to find out their location for me. Gamora didn't want to talk too much nonsense with Shingju, and urged sharply. Good, good. Peter Quill shrugged, then started contacting Kraft with the communicator in his hand. Starju? What's the matter? Kraft, who was doing the finishing work on the Star of Arales, was also a little surprised after receiving the call from the star. Oh, that. Peter Quill pondered and said, it just seems that I haven't heard from you recently, so I want to ask where you were and if something happened. Thank you for your concern, we just went back to the base to rest recently. Kraft didn't doubt Starju's thoughts at all, but felt that he was actually quite good. Kraft himself didn't care much about the fellow Shingju, but after thinking about Shingju's experience, he would value the Earth. The fellow seems reasonable. Then. How is Ego? You must not let him run away. Shingju hesitated for a while, and still asked about Yi Ji's situation. Although he personally wanted to kill the guy who was his father in blood, but killed his mother. But in any case, Igor was defeated by Kraft and the others. It was a captive and trophy belonging to Death Vanguard. He, a guy who didn't make much effort, didn't have much to say. After all, if Kraft and Alale were not there, Yongdu would have died in Yigo's hands, and he would also become an energy battery. The most important thing is that Alale was present at the time, and Shingju didn't dare. What are the different opinions? Don't worry, I have locked him in our base, he can't escape. There is nothing wrong with Kraft's statement. Igor's core is placed on the Star of Arale. Although he can now condense a body with energy, he cannot leave without Kraft's consent. If Yigo dared to leave his core, it would be destroyed, so Arales was a huge amounts of prison for Yigo. Well, what? Seeing Gamora winking and asking himself to ask Kraft about their position quickly, Peter Quill had to change the subject a bit bluntly. I'm very interested in your base, can I visit it? Okay. Where are you now? I will pick you up. Kraft still had no doubts, and agreed. I glanced at Gamora and saw her nodding lightly before Shingju replied. I'm in Contra Sha Xing. Okay. You may have to wait a little longer there. I don't know how much time it will take now. No problem. I am very free now. Looking at the black hole in Gamora's hand, Peter Quill replied helplessly, and then ended the communication. Well, now I'm waiting for them to come. Xingju shrugged to Gamora, found a place to sit down, put on the headphones and started listening to the song with his antique Walkman. While Star-Lord was waiting for Kraft on Contra Sha Xing, Kraft also returned to the cross through the portal on Arale. Angela, let's go to Contra Sha Xing. Unless it's a special situation, Angela won't eavesdrop on Kraft's communications, so she didn't know that Kraft was going to pick up people, so when Kraft told her the destination, Angela's response it seems a little strange. Then, that. Brother, you go to Contra Sha Xing. Why do you want to tell me, just go secretly by yourself? Kraft looked at Angela on the screen with a bewildered face. She changed from the pirate's red posture on the screen and became squeezed. There was still a blush on her small face, and she didn't know what she was being embarrassed about. So what happened to Contra Sha Xing? Brother, don't you know? Seeing Kraft's confusion, Angela realized that she seemed to have misunderstood something. What do you know? Kraft is even more inexplicable. Contra Sha Xing is the famous nightclub in the Interstellar. It is the kind that Uncle Martin often goes to. Angela replied with a red face on the screen. Che. Kraft patted his forehead speechlessly, and quickly explained to Angela. I was in the past to pick up Peter Quill. He said he wanted to visit our base. He also took it. Why do these adults want to go to the nightclub all day long? How can women be interesting with robots? But think about the traces of some ubiquitous body fluids that were detected inside his spacecraft when he was repairing the Milano for Xingju, then it is not surprising that others will be on the Contra Sha Xing. Ends. Yes. Is that so? I'm going to start the spaceship. Angela embarrassedly covered her flushed little face, and disappeared on the screen with a swish. The Cross Pioneer is still quite far away from Contra Sha Xing, but Contra Sha Xing, as a famous entertainment place in the Interstellar, naturally has a jumping point nearby, and it is of the kind that is open to everyone. So when Xingju's second song was only half heard, the cross had already appeared above Contra Sha Xing. Due to the special positioning of Contra Sha Xing, Kraft, who was afraid of teaching his sister, did not choose to land. Instead, he contacted Xingju and asked him to fly the Milano to the Cross Pioneer. No matter what you plan to do, I advise you to think carefully before you speak. After flying into the cross with Gamora, Peter Quill reminded him that he was not worried about Kraft or Gamora, he was just worried that he was mistaken as being with the eager Gamora. Stop talking nonsense. Go on. Gamora urged Ding Xingju's back with the gun in her hand. Remember, don't play tricks. Xingju had no choice but to jump out of the Milano first, but Gamora did not rush out, but hid in the spacecraft and continued to aim at Xingju with his gun. How are you? Star Ju, who jumped off the spaceship, ran into Arale who had rushed over. What about the present? After finishing the call, Roar's Alalay leaned over Peter Quill's body and looked back and forth. Since Xingju gave her a puppet last time, Alalay remembered this uncle who would give her a gift. Gifts, gifts. Oh. Gifts. Some, wait a minute. Peter Quill was stunned for a moment, and then he came back to his senses immediately, and quickly fumbled on himself. He definitely didn't prepare any gifts, but when faced with a bear kid who could break stars with his bare hands, did he dare to say that he didn't bring gifts? Fortunately, Peter Quill has always had a lot of gadgets. In addition to the equipment used to deal with various emergencies, there are also some props used to match his bragging rights, so he quickly found one. The stone that emits a strange light, and handed it to Arale. Ouch. So beautiful. Arale put the stone in front of her eyes, watched the brilliance on it for a while, then happily grabbed the stone and ran away. I'll show it to Sister Angela and Quinn. Gamora, who was still hiding in the Milano, frowned. She didn't expect that there were children on the ship. Although the pink-skinned woman named Barrett also said that among the members of Death Vanguard there are children, but most people think it is just a small race or it is an error. Even if a small number of people believed it, they thought it was the children of certain members, and they didn't take this information too seriously. Gamora originally thought that since these cosmic pirates had all returned to their base, the children on the spaceship should stay in the base. After hesitating for a while, the desire to escape from Thanos still prevailed, and Gamora chose to jump out of the Milano. Cooperate well with me, or I will kill you. Gamora, who walked to Xingju's side, warned in a low voice, and concealedly took out the gun, and put it on Xingju's waist. One day, I will use my gun to come back. Xingju curled his lips, muttering a pun in a low voice. Hearing Xingju's muttering and understanding, Gamora squinted at him, but didn't care about him too much, but carefully observed the surrounding environment. Change to green again. You really don't want to pick your taste. When Kraft came to the tarmac, what he saw was a green alien girl who was very close to Peter Quill. There was a precedent for bury it, and Kraft suddenly misunderstood the relationship between the two of them. What? Shingju opened his mouth and was about to explain, but he felt his arm tighten. He turned his head and saw that it was Gamora who suddenly held his arm. Gamora glared at Shingju concealedly. The gun hidden behind him was matched with a warning, and then turned his head, showing a smile that he thought was sweet, and said to Kraft, "Hello. I am an admirer of the Death Vanguard, so I pestered Peter and asked him to show me here. Peter, please introduce me soon." Gamora, who was smiling like a flower, turned her head to face Peter Quill and said coquettishly. At the same time, he stabbed the muzzle on his back. Shingju, who was pointed at by the gun, rolled his eyes helplessly, and cooperated with the introduction. "This is Kraft Lee, the deputy captain of the Cross Pioneer, the actual leader of the Death Pioneer." "You were joking." Gamora's eyes widened, and there was a fierce look in Peter Quill's gaze, and she thought the slick guy in front of her might be going to play some tricks again. There are not a few people who are in the interstellar world when they are teenagers. Gamora himself has made a reputation at the age of 15 or 6, but being a fame is not the same as being the leader of a certain force. Quill didn't lie to you, the Death Vanguard is indeed in my control. As Gamora's fingers gradually tightened, considering whether to shoot Peter Quill, Kraft spread out his hands and replied. "It's just that my sister wants to be a captain, so I gave her the position of captain." Sister, younger sister. The word sister is quite special for Gamora. Although her relationship with Nebula is very bad, in fact Gamora really wants to have a good relationship with Nebula, but because of Thanos' training method, the two of them can only get more and more hostile to each other. Yes, Captain Red Queen is about the same age as O'Reilly just now. Peter Quill didn't know that he was almost shot down by Gamora, and explained to her with a hint of mischief. In fact, there are only 3 members of Death Vanguard, Kraft and his 2 younger sisters. Oh, yes, there is also a dog named Quinn. In fact, there is a symbiote called Riot, and now I can barely add a dad. Kraft silently added a word in his heart, but didn't say it because he suddenly caught a glimpse of the gun that Gamora had accidentally exposed. Is this a special play popular on a certain planet? Kraft pointed to the gun in Gamora's hand and asked curiously. Gamora and Peter Quill looked at each other for a while, and suddenly stretched out their hands on their waists, then drew the knife and put it on Shingju's neck, while the other hand turned the muzzle and aimed it at Clough not far away. Special. Sorry, you saw it too. Shingju, who was held by the knife on his neck again, shrugged helplessly at Kraft. I was also coerced, a victim. To shut up. Gamora was so annoyed with the inconspicuous fellow Shingju, she pressed down the knife in her hand to make Shingju stop talking, and then said to Kraft, "Hand over the Universe Spirit Ball." Cosmic Spirit Orb. Shingju had something to say when he heard this. "I knew you were looking for the Cosmic Spirit Orb, I wouldn't sell it to Kraft." Cosmic Spirit Orbs that you sold to Death Vanguard? Gamora was stunned for a moment, and then immediately recalled that the Predator had indeed received a commission from a broker to find the Cosmic Spirit Orb, but in the end the Spirit Orb fell into the hands of the Cosmic Pirate, so she ignored it for a while. Yeah, it was sold at the broker's purchase price of 150,000 yuan. After the sale was sold out, this kid told me that it was more than this price. Peter Quill looked annoyed. I had known that I would have offered a higher price. Do you know the ignorant collector Talia Defan? What price is being offered for the Universe Spirit Ball? Gamora looked at Peter Quill with a foolish look. How many? Peter Quill is also very curious about how much this thing is worth, and why such famous characters as Ronan and Defan want to get the Cosmic Spiritual Ball. 4 billion. Gamora gently spit out a number that made Peter Quill doubt his hearing. How many? Mr. Shingju, who was stimulated by this number, suddenly turned his head and looked at Gamora. The magnitude and speed made Gamora a big jump. If she hadn't reacted faster than Shingju's movements, and if she closed her hand in time, Shingju would just claw herself and die. But even so, Shingju's neck was cut through the skin by the sharp blade, and a trace of blood was shed. However, at the moment Peter Quill didn't even have the mind to worry about the injury on his neck. All his attention was attracted by the quote from Gamora. The number you just said is 4 billion? Peter Quill bit his cheek and squeezed his doubts through his teeth. Yes, that's why I want to take it from Death Vanguard. After receiving Gamora's reply, Peter Quill turned pale. 4 billion things were sold by him for 150,000. He used to think he was very shrewd. Ah. So what? Don't you expect me to compensate you? We've already lost money and money. Kraft at the moment is very unkind. Stop talking. I have a headache. My heart hurts even more. Peter Quill clutched his heart, as if he was about to die. I don't care how much your cosmic spirit orb was bought, now give it to me immediately. After clarifying his thoughts, Gamora finally grasped the point again and pointed a gun at Kraft and shouted. That won't work, I still use that stuff. Kraft refused to change his face when facing the muzzle. Wait. Didn't you say that you were commissioned by someone else to buy the cosmic spirit orb? Star Jew, who was half dead while clutching his chest, suddenly raised his head and asked. Oh, I lied to you. Kraft shrugged, without a trace of shame after being deceived. What am I? Peter Quill felt his head and heart hurt even more. Gamora frowned, looked back and forth between Peter Quill and Kraft several times, suddenly felt that the hostage in his hand seemed worthless. Hey. What are you doing? Mr. Shingju, who was pushed aside, staggered and asked with an unhappy expression. Gamora ignored him, and while firing 3-shot rounds at Kraft, he raised the long knife in his hand and rushed towards him. Is it so sudden? The electric shock shell was blocked by the energy shield of the honeycomb grid that suddenly appeared less than half a meter away from Kraft. Then Kraft raised his right hand and aimed his palm at Gamora, who was leaping over. The surrounding air suddenly became violent, and a column of huge amounts of wind wrapped around Kraft's arm and hit Gamora, blowing her whole body out, and hitting Milano hard behind her. Number above. Guidance Magic Wind Gun. Kraft's nest on Aurelie is not just for building a space base. He also has the 2 infinite gems he is studying, and the blue energy that Igor has mastered, which he named Light. The most important 7 obsidian for making the Force Guide is one of Kraft's research results during this period. Although he failed to produce all types of 7 obsidian in the dream, it is enough for Kraft to round his own magic dream. Seeing that the knocked-up Gamora got up and wanted to continue, Kraft once again activated the Guiding Force Magic Gel Thick Flock. A black-purple circular hole appeared under her feet, and khaki light spewed out from it, shrouded in Gamora's body. Suddenly, Gamora felt like she was trapped in a swamp. She felt great resistance in every move, and her actions suddenly became sluggish. Because it was the first time that the Force magic was used in actual combat, Kraft felt that he couldn't stop a bit. Guidance Magic Lightning Beam. After throwing a thunderlight at Gamora and trembling her with electricity, Kraft threw another arrow of water at her. Then 2 hellos were summoned to tie up Gamora, who had lost his resistance. Surprised. Are you still an ability person? Peter Quill stared at him from the side. In this vast space, aliens with supernatural powers are actually not too few, and even some alien races have supernatural powers, but under the huge amounts of the population of the universe, superhumans appear to be very powerful. Rare. Shingju has traveled north and south for so many years, and he has not seen more than 3 figures with supernatural powers. Kraft, an Earth fellow, is not only a superpower, but the supernatural powers he possesses are so fancy. Wait. Aurelie's weird power that can smash the planet with one punch, should it be considered a power? Peter Quill suddenly recalled that because he was too shocked, or feared, that he subconsciously didn't think about this problem too much. Thinking about it now, it should be that the ability has not run away. And Angela, who can be the captain of the Cross Pioneer, is certainly not just as simple as Kraft's pet sister. So what kind of fairy brothers and sisters are these 3? Thinking that he clearly has the blood of the god, but still no different from an ordinary human, Mr. Shingju is a little autistic. Although I am indeed an ability person, yes, those just now are not abilities, but magic. Kraft corrected. What? You can still magic? Is this really reasonable? The cross and those huge robots were made by Kraft, the Star-Lord had known for a long time, and now he was told that Kraft could still use magic and abilities? Peter Quill said he was sour. Are you a descendant of the gods? That guy Ego must be a fake god. After grabbing Gamora, Kraft held his chin in a little wonder what to do with the captive. Unlike the riots, Gamora's race has a better physical fitness and a greener skin. There is nothing particularly worth studying. Although she still showed signs of transformation, Kraft was not very interested in this aspect at first, and there was a lot of knowledge about the transformation of the human body in the dream, which he was not rare at all. Sure enough, just kill it. All came to the Cross Pioneer to rob. Kraft didn't let her be so kind, so he took out a banging gun and aimed it at Gamora's head. Wait a minute, friend. Peter Quill suddenly jumped out to stop him. You plan to kill her like this? Originally, with Peter Quill's temperament, no matter how obsessed he was, he wouldn't do such a foolish thing to plead with the enemy, but I don't know why, Peter Quill felt that the green-skinned girl in front of him was particularly pleasing to the eye. That's why I couldn't help but jump out to intercede. But after a glance at him, Kraft sarcastically said, I don't hold you accountable for bringing her here. It's for the sake of the cosmic spiritual ball and the Earth fellow. I advise you not to take an inch. He. I didn't believe in your strength to dare to bring her here. Peter Quill smiled shamelessly, and then began to curve to save the country. I mean, don't you ask about her origins. After all, someone with such a skill as her should not be an unknown person. When Gamora talked to Xingju before, she didn't report her family, and Xingju didn't pay much attention to the girl's name. Anyway, he could sleep until he was asleep, and the name didn't matter to him. Her skill. Is it good? Kraft tilted his head and looked suspiciously at Gamora, who was tied into silkworms by Harrow. Peter Quill was choked, and then stiffly raised the corner of his mouth. It's definitely not comparable to you, but she can capture the famous Star Jew. Naturally, she has a good skill. Ignoring the premise of being famous, you make some sense. Kraft pondered for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Although Peter Quill's original strength is very mediocre, but his running skills do have a good hand. The green-skinned alien woman in front of her can capture him without causing any obvious damage, indicating that her strength is absolutely crushing the fully equipped Xingju. But, who is she who cares about me? I'm not even afraid of the Shia Empire, and I'm still afraid of these hyenas. Kraft curled his lips and pointed his gun at Gamora's head again. He really felt that there was no need for interrogation. Kraft's plan was to unite those forces in the Interstellar to fight against Thanos' army. That's right, but he didn't intend to wrong himself because of this. And like this kind of bounty hunter-like profession, the only one that has formed a large-scale organization is actually the Predator. They are also divided into many different factions. The remaining miscellaneous troops are basically small-scale teams, even it's a lone wolf. My name is Gamora, Thanos' adopted daughter. If you are not afraid of him, just do it. Seeing that Kraft was really going to kill herself, Gamora had to lift the name of her adoptive father. After all, she just wanted to escape Thanos' control and didn't want to die. Thanos. Kraft narrowed his eyes, and had been complaining about Thanos' inefficiency before. He didn't expect his men to come to the door so quickly. However, the person in front of him may also be pulling the flag. So Kraft questioned. As far as I know, Thanos' power is not weak. He will send you alone to capture the cosmic spiritual ball? Thanos is taking his troops to fight in other galaxies, so he handed over the task of finding things to me and Ronan the Accuser. So the Accuser Ronan was looking for the cosmic spiritual ball because of Thanos' orders? Accurately speaking, it should be a transaction. Gamora explained. After Ronan helps Thanos obtain the cosmic spiritual orb, Thanos will help him eliminate Xandar and the Nova Legion. This. Kraft scratched his head and became even more suspicious of this woman named Gamora. Since he has to send soldiers, why doesn't he directly send his hands to find the cosmic spiritual ball? More people can find it faster, right? Why bother? How can it be more cost-effective to find something than to fight? I have no idea. Gamora was stunned for a moment, and replied. To be honest, after Kraft said this, she also thought Thanos' behavior was a bit stupid, but Gamora thought that Thanos' usual hobby was to attack the planet everywhere and wipe out half of the population. Maybe he doesn't want to waste too much time on this, and he has already thought of attacking Shandel. When Gamora said this, her tone was not very sure. So you are lying to me? Kraft frowned. Originally, he recognized the reason Gamora said. After all, in Kraft's cognition, Thanos is a mental patient who is determined to eliminate half of the life in the universe to make the goddess of death happy. Then he likes to fight and kill but doesn't like it. Finding something is quite suitable for this person. But Gamora's guilty tone when he said this reinforces Kraft's suspicion. Brother, she didn't lie. Gamora is indeed Thanos' adopted daughter. At this time, a phantom with a pirate hat suddenly appeared beside Kraft. It was the captain of the Cross Pioneer, Angela the Red Queen. Although Angela was unable to cross the network like on Earth because of the different system composition, Kraft also used other methods to collect a lot of intelligence from others, including Gamora's information. It's just that Kraft hasn't watched it much by himself, and instead let the hellos transfer all the content to Angela's host. So after Angela called up the information and showed it to Kraft, he believed that Gamora was really Thanos' adopted daughter. Since it is Thanos' subordinate, then we have to kill even more. Kraft aimed the gun at Gamora's head for the third time. You have hatred with Thanos. Before Xingju stopped again, Gamora, who was pointed at by the gun, became excited. Chew is hard to say, just trying to prevent him from collecting infinite gems. Gamora's reaction was a little strange. Kraft thought for a while, lowered his gun to tell the truth. Infinite gems? Peter Quill and Gamora looked confused. There is one of the infinite gems in the universe spirit ball. Don't worry about Xingju, Gamora, you are also confused. What's the matter? After some inquiries, Kraft finally figured out the situation. Thanos placed an order with Ronan to find the cosmic spirit ball, but did not tell him that it contained infinite gems. Gamora and Thanos' other daughter, Nebula, was temporarily working under Ronan as a helper and overseer, so they didn't know what was inside. It's infinite gems. Gamora snatched the cosmic spirit ball in order to sell it to Collector Defan, and then used the money to escape Thanos' control. Alright. Kraft scratched his head. It seemed that Thanos was still a bit brainy. If Ronan knew that the power gems hidden in the cosmic spiritual orbs, he would be able to solve Shandel without the help of Thanos. It was Gamora. She said that she wanted to betray Thanos. It felt like it was true. Kraft was a little hesitation. Would you like to keep her and get more information about Thanos? Wait. I just said for a long time, what the hell is infinite gems? When Kraft was considering what to do with Gamora, Peter Quill couldn't help but ask. Infinite gems, to put it simply, they are treasures that existed in this world a long time ago. There are 6 treasures in total, and each one has a strange power. According to legend, the collection of 6 gems can even destroy the world. Kraft briefly introduced infinite gems. I don't know if the collection of 6 gems can destroy the world, but each gem is not simple but true. Anyway, judging from the few infinite gems I have seen, none of them is simple. Kraft grabbed his fingers and started Versailles. The power gems in the cosmic spirit ball can not only give people powerful power, but also increase all energy sources, strengthen the attack effect of weapons, etc. Because I just started it, I only found this ability for the time being. In addition to the power gem, the reality gem is also in my hands. It can generate all kinds of known substances out of thin air, and build fake and real illusions. With the increase of the power gem, it can also convert part of the fantasy into reality. The Dark Elves once I planned to use it to turn the world into eternal night, but it was prevented by the Asgard without success. Mind Gem can control the minds of others, and can also see the aura of other people's thinking. In addition, Chitauri once used the Space Gem to open portals and send troops to the Earth to invade. There is no need to resort to jumping points. The forces of the Earth have also used the Space Gem to develop many weapons. The Time Gem is in the hands of a magician. She can use Time Gem to spy on time, see the past and the future, and also use Time Gem's ability to restore damaged items. Soul Gem hasn't seen it before, so I don't know what it is useful for. After Versailles, Kraft raised his head and looked at the dumbfounded Peter Quill and Gamora. What's the matter? Why do you have this expression? There are 6 infinite gems in total, you have already seen 5, are you okay? Peter Quill's expression was tangled, his 5 senses were all huddled together. Sorry, I didn't believe you, or... The rarity of infinite gems is a little bit different from what you described. How do I know? Kraft spread out his hands. Probably luck. Mind Gem. Gamora said suddenly, no, it should be the Mind Scepter. It was in Thanos' hands at first. Huh. Isn't the Mind Scepter Loki's weapon? That scepter was given to him by Thanos. Gamora explained earnestly. About 2 or 3 years ago, an Asgard named Loki Odinson appeared in front of Thanos because of the random outflow of space. I don't know exactly what he talked about with Thanos, but then Thanos gave him the psychic scepter and handed over the Zeteric army to Loki to command. Gamora said that hesitation started suddenly, and finally gritted her teeth and continued. Soon after I received a mission from Thanos. The content of the mission was to find something called Soul Gem, but I didn't know the existence of infinite gems before this. Well, the time seems to match. With his own experience and the intelligence in the memory fragments, Kraft basically believed Gamora's statement. That said, Thanos didn't take long to collect infinite gems. Yes, he should have learned about infinite gems only after he obtained the Scepter of the Mind, and the Scepter of the Mind should be the spoils obtained from a certain planet in a battle more than 10 years ago. Probably after hearing that Kraft had 2 infinite gems in his hand and able to use their power, Gamora seemed to put the hope of fighting against Thanos on Kraft, and unhesitation of relevant information in information. I have another problem. Peter Quill interjected again. What did Thanos collect infinite gems for? Is it to conquer the universe? In fact, he still wanted to ask what Kraft collected infinite gems for, But after thinking about the personalities of the three Kraft brothers and sisters, he suddenly didn't want to ask. Thanos has always been committed to maintaining the balance of the universe. Every time he attacks the next planet, he kills half of the population on it. This is how my parents were killed by him. I guess he collected infinite gems for once. Sex solves half of the population in the universe. Shocked. Is it okay to kill half of the people in the universe? Is he a lunatic? Gamora smiled bitterly. That's why he is called a crazy titan. No, wait a minute. Kraft squeezed his eyebrows. You said Thanos wiped out half of the universe's population in order to maintain a shit balance? Yes, Gamora nodded, wondering what Kraft was surprised. Thanos' code of conduct is not a secret. You can find out after a little inquiries. Killing half of the people can maintain the balance of the universe. What is the principle? Kraft was a little confused. Didn't he say that in his memory fragments? Didn't he mean to please the goddess of death? Is it a parallel world again? Thanos said that the resources in the universe are limited, and too much population will lead to the ultimate destruction of the universe, so he has to eliminate half of the population in the universe. What's the reason for this? Kraft's mouth twitched frantically. After eliminating half of the population, wouldn't the other half of the population have any offspring? Won't the population rise back sooner or later? What? Do. He will do it again. So, is Thanos' character set up as a brain problem? Whether it is to please the goddess of death or to maintain the balance of the world, Thanos' reasons seem to be very snake-like. In contrast, Kraft felt that the reason to please the goddess of death made him more acceptable. If this world is really some fantasy work before he travels, then his screenwriter must be flooded with water. What are you talking about? Gamora is missing. Since Ronan handed over the task of the Universe Spirit Ball to Gamora, he has been focusing on dealing with Shandel, and has no time to pay attention to the progress of her mission. He didn't know to search for the universe until his men reported to him. Gamora of the Spirit Orb is missing. According to the information we found, Gamora tracked down the Predator who appeared on Mogra at the time, and then captured him at Contra Sha Xing. After that, they left in the spacecraft, and there was no more news. Ronan's hands knelt down and continued to report. However, according to witnesses at the time, she should have found the Death Vanguard after catching the Predator. At that time, Xingju and Gamora made a lot of noise in Contra Sha Xing, so Ronan's men did not take much time to find out the situation at that time. Death Vanguard. Ronan angrily punched the armrest of the seat, and the armrest made of hard stone was cracked by his punch. It seems that the ability of this group of newly emerged cosmic pirates is a bit beyond my expectation. After venting his anger, Ronan stood up from his throne, and ordered to the men who were still kneeling down tremblingly. But that's it. Send out all the necromantic fleets, even if you search the universe. Dig out those pirates for me. Although Ronan still wanted to continue targeting Shandar, he didn't want to provoke Thanos. As the daughter of Thanos, if Gamora knows that he lost his daughter, let alone help to attack Shandel, Thanos is afraid that he will help Shandel to solve him in turn. Following an order from the accuser Ronan, a large number of necromantic fighters flew out of the spiral-shaped Darkstar mothership and spread in all directions in order to find the trail of the pirates in the universe. At this time, the Cross Pioneer, targeted by Ronan, came to a planet called Vomir. Oh. It's really desolate here. After Xingju jumped out of the spaceship, he muttered softly while looking at the empty surroundings, then he turned his head to look at Gamora who had been released by Kraft. Are you sure Soul Gem is here? If the information I got is not wrong. Gamora is also not very sure, because she has not come here to verify after obtaining the information. Ha 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 ha. It's the Black Sun. Rayleigh, who got off the spaceship with Kraft, pointed to the huge amounts of black sun in the sky and yelled. I don't know if they came just right, or the celestial movement here is like this. Observing the fixed star here on Vomir star is now in a state of solar eclipse. Only the edge part leaks a little light, which leads to Vomir star has been in the nighttime. If Soul Gem is really on this planet, it can only be there. Kraft looked around. The surrounding plains were endless and without grass. Only not far away stood a not particularly high mountain, but around that mountain was surrounded by clouds. It didn't look like an ordinary place. Although Kraft's Infinite Gems radar did not find any traces of infinite gems on this planet, it was not that he had never encountered a situation that could isolate Infinite Gems radar searches, so Kraft still planned to go there and take a look. Look at the very mysterious mountain. Angela and Quinn both chose to stay on the spacecraft. In their opinion, Soul Gem is still inferior to the Cross and Shang-Ji. Definitely, Angela just left the machine on the spaceship, and her program duplication can still follow Kraft and Rayleigh. So Kraft only took Rayleigh, along with Gamora and Star-Lord, and began to climb the mountain. It's just climbed this height before it started to snow and wind. Isn't this too real? I don't know if the guy named Peter has the potential to talk ridiculously. After climbing the mountain for a while, Shinju started to complain. Kraft and Gamora didn't bother to care about him, but Rayleigh became happier. It's snow. Ha 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 ha. Rayleigh first stretched out his tongue to catch the snow falling from the sky, and ran to Kraft after getting tired of playing. Brother. Let's make a snowman. Well, there is little snow around here. Due to the strong wind still blowing, although there was little snow, but no snow was formed, it was still a little difficult to build a snowman. But Kraft has always been a model brother who spoils his sister, and he can solve this kind of trivial matter all at once. The main reason for the lack of snowfall is insufficient water. As long as the nearby clouds are filled with water, the snowfall can be increased. Thinking like this, Kraft raised his arm to the sky, and pointed his right palm to the top of his head. Guidance magic water blue bombing. After Kraft took the initiative to reduce the power of the magic, the moisture created by the guided magic turned into dense rain, poured from the bottom up into the thick clouds in the sky, and after a while, the wind was mixed with it. The snowflakes became more. Ah roar roar. It's snowing. Accompanied by Rayleigh's joyous roar, Kraft launched 2 more water blue bombardments into the air, and then another weakened version of the diamond star further lowered the nearby temperature. So soon, enough snow piled up nearby to make a snowman. Snowmen. Rayleigh happily plunged into the snowdrift and began to snowball. After spending some time, Kraft accompanied Rayleigh to build a very ordinary snowman, took a picture of her and the snowman, and then took Rayleigh to move forward. When the 2 siblings were making snowmen, Gamora and Peter Quill did not urge them, and watched quietly from the side. Gamora was very envious of Kraft and Rayleigh because he thought of the relationship between her and Nebula, and didn't want to interrupt their games, and Shinju didn't dare to urge them. Although this mountain looks high in the wind and snow, the actual height is not much, so the 4 people quickly came to the top of the mountain. Welcome, Kraft Lee, son of Martin Lee, Gamora, daughter of Thanos, Peter Quill, son of Ego. A figure wearing a black robe floating in the air didn't know where it came from, stopped in front of them, and announced their names and identities in a low and erratic voice. What about me? What about me? The neglected Rayleigh rushed to the black robe man, pointed to his nose and asked repeatedly. I have no idea, the black robe man replied in silence for a while, and there was some doubt in the erratic voice. Knowing all the people who come here is my curse. It should be like this. But I didn't receive any information about you. This question is not important. Gamora stepped forward and asked, where is the soul gem? You should know. It will cost people a terrible price. While talking, the black-robed man landed from midair and his face hidden under the black robe was fully presented in front of everyone. It was a very distinctive face, and more importantly, this face was seen by Kraft. Not only did Kraft have seen this face, but the star of the Captain America comics he had seen on Earth as a child also recognized the identity of this man in black robes. You are Red Skull. Compared to Peter Quill, who was excited to take out the elemental gun, Kraft was much calmer. He stepped forward 2 steps to the Red Skull and examined his face carefully. Are you really Schmidt? Yes, I didn't expect to be able to meet compatriots from the Earth here. Red Skull continued to answer Kraft with that erratic voice. I was banished here by the space gem, guiding others to find treasures that I can't own. As the Red Skull spoke, he led Kraft and the others to the front. Everyone came to the bottom of 2 huge amounts of stone stels. Below the steel was a cliff that was obviously made by hand. The Red Skull walked to the edge of the cliff and stopped, turned around, pointed to the direction of the cliff and said to Kraft and the others, what you are looking for is right in front. Your fear is the same. Kraft came to the edge of the cliff and craned his neck to look down. Under the cliff was a circular stone disc with huge amounts of intricate patterns could be vaguely seen around the disc. I took out the Infinite Gems radar and looked at it. There was still no display on it. Kraft changed to another type of detector, only to find that the energy readings of the entire mountain, including the clouds above, were chaotic and disorderly. No valid information can be detected. Soul Gem occupies a special place in Infinite Gems, Red Skull explained on the side. It can be said that it has a certain kind of wisdom, and if you want to get it, you have to pay a price. Pay the price? Kraft frowned, guessing. The price you were talking about is the soul, right? He subconsciously thought of the thing called the Sage's Stone in the Dreamland, which in some ways resembled Infinite Gems. Yes, it's the soul. Red Skull glanced at Kraft, and then explained. In order to make sure that those who own it can understand its power, the soul gem needs sacrifices. If you want to take it away, you must lose what you love. Exchanging souls for souls. Okay. Slightly better than the sage's stone, it seems that you only need to kill one person to get. Kraft curled his lips, not to mention whether what Red Skull said was true or false. Anyway, it was impossible for him to do what Red Skull said. Ha ha ha. Gamora suddenly laughed in a low voice. In this way, there is no need to worry that Thanos will collect all 6 infinite gems, because he doesn't love anyone at all. Wow, so we don't have to worry anymore. Peter Quill didn't want to run against Thanos from the beginning. It was a predator-certified existence among the unprovocable objects. If it weren't for the cosmic spirit ball was involved, he did. Flee as far as you can. It's not that simple. Kraft gave Xingju a blank look. If you don't collect all the infinite gems, Thanos will give up killing half of the population. And he only needs to catch a couple of deep affections or a father, son, mother and daughter. Kind of, forcing one of them to jump off, and then snatching from the other. You can also get soul gem. Surprised. Where are you from the devil? Peter Quill stared at Kraft in surprise, and Gamora next to him had a similar expression. You can come up with such a vicious method at a young age. The vicious, Kraft twitched his mouth. He couldn't figure out whether these people were innocent or stupid. Rolling his eyes and not bothering to pay attention to these two not-so-smart adults, Kraft pointed to the stone disc below and asked the Red Skull, "Can I go down and take a look?" Can. Perhaps it was the first time this happened, and Red Skull froze for a while before replying. However, Kraft didn't just go straight down like this. Instead, he contacted the Cross Pioneer and jumped over 5 reconnaissance planes with white mice. Clicking on the nano glasses behind his ears, Kraft controlled these reconnaissance planes with mice flying down the cliff. Judging from the data displayed in the glasses, the vital signs of the mice in the reconnaissance plane have been stable. After reaching the bottom of the cliff, Kraft opened the hatch and let them all out, but these mice did not show any special reaction except that they were a little uncomfortable because of the low temperature. Well, Kraft pondered for a moment, but did not rush down, but continued to control the reconnaissance plane. The 2 sides of the 5 reconnaissance planes were opened at the same time, and 2 mechanical arms were extended from the inside. Kraft controlled these mechanical arms to drill and chisel against the circular stone disc below. After removing some fragments from above, jumped directly back into the Cross Pioneer. And Angela's mechanical body had been waiting there for a long time, putting the collected fragments into the instrument for various analysis. However, it is clear that the technology on the scientific side is not very useful for the relatively virtual stuff like the soul. The result of the analysis is that the fragments are basically ordinary stones, but the composition ratio is slightly different from that of the Earth and other planets. But this is all normal. Even on the same planet, the composition of rocks in different regions is different, so this is not a special phenomenon. While Kraft was tossing around, the Red Skull had been watching silently, without showing any attitude to stop it. Aren't you going to stop him? Peter Quill approached the Red Skull cautiously and asked in a low voice, with a little excitement in his heart. After all, this was a conversation with a character in a childhood comic. My task is to guide people who come here to find Soul Gem. As for how you choose, it has nothing to do with me. Red Skull answered calmly. Then what if Soul Gem is taken away? Peter Quill continued to ask, will your mission be over then? I don't know. Red Skull shook his head slightly. I have been tied up here for too long. If removing the Soul Gem will relieve me, I will accept it with pleasure. Then you won't stop if I destroy this place, right? After flying down and strolling around, Kraft returned to the cliff with nothing but Red Skull's confession. So he took out the fishbone rocket launcher and aimed it at the disc below. Wait. Why are you ruining this place? Peter Quill looked dumbfounded. Since we can't find the Soul Gem, and don't plan to trade someone else's life, in order to prevent Thanos from finding this place in the future, it is the best policy to definitely destroy this thing that is probably an altar. Kraft replied definitely, then pulled the trigger. The rocket roared out of roar from the shark-shaped muzzle and hit the altar below the cliff, causing a violent explosion. Kraft exploded a large hole on the huge circular stone disc. Although the defensive power of this altar was known when the reconnaissance plane was collecting debris before, the ability to cause large-scale damage to it so easily still made Kraft a little puzzled. Are you really sure that Soul Gem is hidden here? 2 more rockets were fired to add new scars to the altar below, and Kraft turned his head and asked Gamora and Red Skull. This altar is so simple that it was destroyed by me. It doesn't look like a place where infinite gems are hidden. That's because even if you destroy the altar, it will not affect the soul gem exchange. As long as you offer a sacrifice that meets the conditions at this location, you will be able to get the soul gem. Red Skull replied unhurriedly, "Say it soon." Kraft put away the fish bones and beckoned to Aurelie, who was entertaining himself. "Alalay, don't play. Brother asks you for help if he has something to do." When Kraft and the others were talking to Red Skull, Aurelie, who was not interested in these things, ran to the side to collect snow, and began to pile up snowmen again. Hearing Kraft's call, she immediately dropped her hands. Shui Tuan ran over. Good boy, good boy." Kraft touched Aurelie's little head, praised her, and then pointed to the ground under his feet. "Come on, punch here. Is the method so intense?" Unlike Gamora and Red Skull, who don't know the situation, Mr. Xingju has seen the power of Aurelie's small fist. If it hadn't been known that she was infinitely powerful at the time of trading the Cosmic Spirit Orb, Peter Quill would even have thought that Kraft had given the power gem to Aurelie to use. "What stupid thing are you talking about?" Gamora watched Peter Quill yelling at the big roar with a bewildered look, thinking that this man's brain was really very problematic. However, before Xingju could explain to her, Gamora heard the little sister named Aurelie let out a soft drink, and then shook her little fist to the ground. Ah! Bai Nenen's little fist fell to the ground, and punched a crack in the ground beneath everyone's feet. While Gamora was still surprised by the power of Aurelie's punch, what happened next made her understand what Peter Quill was excited about just now. Vomir's star was smashed in half by this punch. The small crack on the ground stretched all the way out, and in the blink of an eye it became a moat that divided the entire planet into two. Gamora could even pass through the rift under his feet and see the sky on the other side of Vomir's star. Ah! Because of being so shocked, Gamora couldn't even say a complete sentence. He could only point to the moat beneath his feet and utter some onomatopoeia like a fool. Aurelie's punch seemed to have really shocked the soul gem hidden in this planet, and the surrounding climate suddenly became weird. The already violent wind and snow gradually had a tendency to form a tornado, and the thick clouds in the sky also pressed down, blocking the light and giving people the illusion that the sky had collapsed. In addition, in Kraft's smart glasses, a strong energy response is rising from the two stone stels on the cliff, and blue streamers visibly appear with the naked eye, rushing to the sky along the lines on the stone stels. And the clouds in the sky seem to be affected by this energy, forming a huge amounts of pit on everyone's head. I said, "Soul gem wouldn't forcibly extract a person's soul from us, right?" Kraft suddenly had an unknown hunch. Don't say such terrible things casually. However, Kraft did not pay attention to Peter Quill, who was called strangely on the side, because the sense of crisis in his heart became more and more serious with the passage of time. Aurelie. Say a trick to roar over there. Kraft pointed to the void in the sky and shouted to Aurelie. At the same time, he directly summoned the giant's colony. He pulled open the armor of his chest and faced the two stone monuments that were sending energy to the sky. Chest particle cannon. The fierce white light cut off the two huge amounts of stone tablets like a sharp sword. The clouds that had lost their energy supply began toss in the hollows in the sky couldn't maintain their form, and they began to shapeshifting. However, the sense of crisis in Kraft's mind has not diminished at all, but has become clearer. At this moment, Aurelie, who was standing next to Kraft, puffed out her small cheeks and opened her mouth to the already distorted void in the sky. "How are you?" An orange beam of light ejected from Aurelie's mouth and rushed straight into the hollow above everyone's head, and then Kraft and others heard a dull explosion from the clouds. Boom. A huge wave of air exploded in the sky, instantly dispelling the thick clouds above his head. Within Kraft's armor vision, a large amount of unidentified energy gathered in the sky was also in Aurelie's hello. The middle was wiped out completely, and the feeling of being like a man on the back also disappeared. Roar. Kraft was relieved to put away the giant's colony, touched Alal's little head and praised, "Well done. Alale is the best. What a good boy." Ah, roar roar. Aurelie was praised by my brother. I am a good boy. Aurelie happily got up with roar, and then ran to Mr. Xingju with a ha-ha-ha smile, pointing to himself and asking, "Am I a good boy?" Definitely. There is no better child than Aurelie. Peter Quill quickly praised with a thumbs up. Very good. Aurelie, who was praised by Xingju, changed his goal again and ran to Gamora, "Good boy." Yes. Yes. Good boy. Gamora nodded his head frantically, for fear that Aurelie would punch herself too. Aurelie did not forget the Red Skull. She rushed to the Red Skull again and asked, Am I a good boy? Undoubtedly, Red Skull's voice is no longer erratic, but it is still low and hoarse. Thank you, Aurelie, you set me free. Just after Aurelie broke the clouds in the sky, the Red Skull could no longer perceive the origins of Kraft and others, and at the same time the restraint on him by the mountain at his feet disappeared. However, at the same time that this bondage disappeared, the power used to maintain his life was also declining. Red Skull at the moment also felt that his body was getting weaker and weaker, and he was even a little unstable. Roar. 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 Sitting on the ground limply under his feet, Red Skull felt that his roar was starting to become difficult to suck, but at the moment his heart was unusually calm. Finally. Is it over? Looking back on his life, John Schmidt had countless emotions, but in the end they all turned into a sigh of relief. Red Skull closed his eyes and calmly welcomed the arrival of death. In the eyes of Kraft and others, after the Red Skull fell to the ground, his body gradually became transparent, and finally disappeared, and where he disappeared, a stone gleaming with orange light appeared. F*K? That's okay. Kraft scratched his head, possessed, and picked up Soul Gem. He originally wanted to ask Aurelie to knock Vomir's star into pieces directly, so that even if Thanos wanted to obtain the Soul Gem, he couldn't find a place to sacrifice. He didn't expect that it would be so simple to get the Soul Gem. Kraft guessed that the Red Skull was actually dead when it was sent by Space Gem. He was not so much the guide of Soul Gem as the incarnation of Soul Gem. In all likelihood, Soul Gem uses the soul of the Red Skull to guide and screen the arrivals to take themselves away on this mountain. Kraft couldn't figure out the specific truth of definitely. Anyway, he bought an infinite gems somehow. It seems unconsciously. I have collected half of the infinite gems. If you add the one in Martin's hand, 2/3 of the infinite gems are in my hands. Kraft looked at the Soul Gem in his hand speechlessly. He didn't specifically collect infinite gems. Why did he send them to the door one by one? But then again, isn't Soul Gem the most special one in infinite gems? Why am I not feeling anything? Kraft closed one eye, held the Soul Gem in front of him and watched it for a while, then took a sigh of relief at it, put it in his ear and listened. Soul Gem did not respond. It's the same as the original Time Gem. Sure enough, what Red Skull said before is actually Soul Gem bragging, right? On Aurelie star, Kraft frowned at the 3 infinite gems in front of him. Space Gem is in Asgard, Time Gem is in Ancient One, Mind Gem is in my father's place, and the rest is in my own hands. Doesn't this mean Thanos will definitely find his head? My fleet hasn't been built yet, bastard. But it was impossible for me to throw away the infinite gems I got, so I could only increase my strength as much as possible. It is too slow to knock out the Dreamland technology one by one, and most of the technology may not be able to deal with Thanos, so it is better to control infinite gems directly. Kraft has done some research on Reality Gem and Power Gem before, but the progress is not too great. Let's not talk about the Reality Gem. At present, the function of generating materials out of thin air is a bit useful for Kraft. Although the Power Gem has useful abilities that can strengthen the power of weapons and allow the Reality Gem to create fantasy materials in dreams, its power is really too violent. This is the only infinite gems that Kraft can't get started directly. At the beginning, if Kraft hadn't summoned the Dreamland armor in time, he would have been killed by the amount of violent force leaked by the Power Gem. Because of this experience, Kraft was very careful when studying the Power Gems later. Finally, Soul Gem. I still don't know how to use it like this. It doesn't seem to be a problem for me to think about it this way. Kraft wondered if he was going back to the Earth to find Ancient One for consultation. However, even though I have dispatched an unmanned spacecraft with a portal to the Earth after the completion of the Aurelie star, the spacecraft is still halfway, and I can't do it temporarily if I want to consult Ancient One. So Kraft was going to ask Ego. Anyway, this guy has lived for millions of years, and he should know what to do. Except for not being able to leave Aurelies at will, Ego is actually quite free. After helping Kraft to transform the planet, no one will care about him anymore, allowing him to wander around on Aurelies. So now Ego is also gradually admitting his fate. Anyway, after burying the seeds in other planets, he spends most of his time sleeping on his own planet. When Kraft found him, Igor also answered the question very cooperatively. Infinite gems. Hearing Kraft's explanation, Ego touched his beard and fell into the memory. I don't know much about infinite gems. I only know that each of them has magical powers. Have you never thought about getting one for yourself? After all, your previous dream was to swallow the entire universe, although it is definitely not possible now. After hearing Kraft's words, Igo's cheek twitched twice, but he did not dare to complain. Most of my time is actually perfecting my own planet. There are a lot of substances that I have sifted through many years. When Igo said this, his heart ached. The planet he had spent so long squeezing out was just discarded by Kraft. The time I really use the avatar to travel in the universe is not long, but from the information I have learned about infinite gems, those who have used infinite gems generally make a carrier to stabilize the energy of the gems. After Igo's reminder, Kraft realized that Space Gem was placed in Tesseract, Mind Gem was placed in Scepter, Time Gem also had Eye of Agamotto as its outer shell, Reality Gem also needed the state of TIE particles. Parasitic into the living body. That is to say, the Power Gem and the Soul Gem are slightly special. The Cosmic Spirit Ball is said to be a carrier, rather than a container. It is probably also related to the Power Gem's overwhelming rage, and the Soul Gem needs the soul as a sacrifice to make it appear. Also in his own memory fragments, after Thanos collected 6 infinite gems, he also used an exaggerated glove to place them. So do I have to find it first, or do I make an infinity gauntlet by myself? Kraft touched his chin, lost in thought. But he has no desire to snap his fingers. But this was a thought. Kraft bid farewell to Eagle and went back to his laboratory again. He didn't know what kind of carrier could be used to more effectively mobilize the energy of infinite gems. Anyway, as far as it seemed, the Dark Elf's method was the least effective. The Cosmic Spirit Ball and the Metal Ball that Ancient One gave him to collect ether are all containers, so they are not suitable for use as a carrier. Eye of Agamotto is a product of magic. Ancient One borrowed to study. There is also Tesseract with the Space Gem. Kraft has only seen it and has not touched it. The Mind Gem carrier Scepter was lost by his chest particle cannon, so he is about what to use as the carrier of infinite gems. There is no clue at all. Soul Gem aside. This thing involves souls that Kraft is not familiar with, so I'll study it after returning to Earth to find Ancient One for help. The Power Gem and Reality Gem Kraft intend to put them on the same carrier. Because only with the strengthening of Power Gems, Reality Gem can produce materials that do not exist in Kraft's dream, just like 7 obsidian. And many more. Kraft's inspiration flashed. Can I put infinite gems directly into the Force Guide? The operating mode of the Power Director is to place the 7 obsidian on the Power Director according to a specific conduction circuit. Different conduction circuits and 7 obsidian can produce different effects. Therefore, in order to be able to use different magic, I carried several power guides on my body. But if you put the Reality Gem and the Power Gem into the Force guiding device, what guidance magic do you want to use? Kraft, who had found the idea, started his experiment with enthusiasm. Because the energy of the Power Gem is too violent, Kraft used the same material as the Universe Spiritual Ball when making the Force Guide. This material is not originally very strong, but it can stabilize the Power Gem and let it will not run away easily. However, it seems that it is also because this thing suppresses the Power Gem too much, making the first version of the Infinite Gems Force Guide almost unusable, so Kraft had to debug the metal in the Force Guide time and time again. Accounted for. After countless boring attempts, Kraft finally produced the final version. Just as he expected, the Infinite Gems version of the Force Guide can not only release any type of force magic at will, but also it can simulate some spells of non-conductive magic system in the Dreamland, and the Reality Gem and the original ability of the Power Gem still exist. It's just that Kraft's physical fitness, using Reality Gem to create objects and illusions is fine, but the ability to activate the Power Gem is a little weak. Even if you wear the Dream Armor, every time you use the Power Gem it takes time to recover. But even so, Kraft was very satisfied with this. While he was able to produce a stable and fairly efficient Infinite Gems carrier with almost no clue, he also produced a Force Guide that far exceeded the original. I really am a genius. After Vomir Star bid farewell to Kraft, Peter Quill drove his Milano and returned to the Predator's spacecraft alone. Quill? You are still alive. Yongdu said sarcastically, as always, I thought you had been sacked by the hijacker. What happened on Contra Sha Xing has too many witnesses, so Yongdu has long known that Peter Quill was taken away by a green-skinned woman. However, in view of Peter Quill's past love history, Yongdu subconsciously thought that he was approached by a former lover 80% of the time, so after understanding the general situation, he threw the matter aside. Looking at Peter Quill now, he should have escaped from the old lover. Come on. Courage, Peter Quill waved his hand, showing a tired look. I am not in the mood to fight with you now. Although the experience of this period of time has been magnificent, it is actually nothing to Peter Quill, the veteran Predator. Although it was indeed a little exciting to open the planet with bare hands, it was not the first time he saw him. Peter Quill will look awkward. The main reason is that he knows that he has lost nearly 4 billion of fortune. This is so heartbreaking. Thinking of this, Peter Quill's spirit became more wilted. What's your expression? Yongdu teased. Could it be that these days, you were drained by that robber? Woo, Quill, didn't you mean you have a gun with unlimited bullets? Our little Quill exchanged girlfriends so often, probably because he couldn't feed them enough, so he could only keep changing and cheating, right? The surrounding predators started booing. Peter Quill's record in picking up girls has always made these crooked guys very jealous, and it is rare to have a chance to laugh at him. Regardless of his previous relationship with him, one of them all followed him. However, this group of predators found that Peter Quill, who used to be ridiculed by them, would immediately refute, and often talked about the Confucian scholars who did not let the wind fall. This time, Peter Quill had no desire to fight back at all, but put on a Sema expression swayingly. Go to the lounge. Oh, it looks like Quill has really been hit. This novel reaction calmed the predators. After they looked at each other for a while, a predator said softly. Poor Quill. Although it is not clear what happened to Peter Quill, there was a hint of sympathy on everyone's faces. After a while. Ah roar. What are you waiting for? Still not celebrating? This kid Quill has today too. Hi everyone. Play music. Serve wine. Ooh. A group of gloating predators started a carnival. Loud music. Constantly drinking water. A group of demons dancing in the predator's spacecraft. Food residues and alcohol splashing everywhere. A group of people drunk, lying in the hull of the spacecraft. Just when the predators were drunk and fell asleep, the necromantic fleet under the accuser Ronins at the moment was approaching them. Gamora did not follow Peter Quill to join the predators, nor did he stay aboard the Cross. Instead, he used Thanos' intelligence to exchange for a spaceship and a fairly objective amount of money from crafts, and found one for himself. The place hides. As a killer trained by Thanos, Gamora's own concealed ability is pretty good, and Kraft's spacecraft basically have invisible force fields, so Ronin's necromantic fleet did not find any trace of Gamora. But Peter Quill's Milano was caught by them, and they chased him all the way to Yongdu's spacecraft. So when the predators woke up, they saw that they had been surrounded by a large fleet of necromancers. Is Ronin planning to go to war with the predators? Yongdu immediately contacted the Nebula leading the fleet, and asked angrily. Whether to start war depends on you. Nebula calmly replied. We are here to inquire about Gamora and the whereabouts of Death Vanguard. Quill. It's your trouble for us again. Yongdu still doesn't know that the woman who kidnapped Peter Quill was Gamora, but he knows that Death Vanguard is also from the Earth, and Peter Quill seems to have some friendship with them. I don't want to recite this but Peter Quill, who already knew the cause and effect, denied, and then decisively sent a coordinate to Nebula. Death Vanguard is here, and Gamora is in their hands. This time, Xingju will give Kraft and their whereabouts so happily, and I also consulted Kraft's consent in advance. After all, Gamora is fine, if Ronin and even Thanos come to him again for the cosmic spiritual ball. His small body can't hold it. So Kraft agreed that he could directly tell the position of the Cross Pioneer when he was being questioned. Anyway, Kraft really didn't think he would be able to do Thanos without infinite gems. Correct. Kraft, who has 3 infinite gems in his hand, and O'Reilly, the big killer, is now so inflated. Then, before the Nebula on the other side asked about it, Peter Quill took the initiative to give out the excuses that had already been made up. The woman named Gamora forced me to ask me where the Universe Spirit Orb was when she came. I told her that the Universe Spirit Orb was sold to Death Vanguard by me, and then she forced me to contact them and wanted to steal the Universe Spirit Orb from Death Vanguard. Ball. Peter Quill put on an innocent expression, pretending to be ignorant of the specific situation of the Universe Spirit Ball. I have no choice but to do as she said. Fortunately, the captain of Death Vanguard and I came from the same planet, so they left contact information with each other. After they defeated Gamora, they didn't embarrass me too much. They put me back. If you want to find Gamora, it's better to hurry up. God knows how long Death Vanguard will stay here. Besides, don't even think about using me to threaten them. Gamora tried it. It didn't work. Peter Quill raised his head, revealing the scar on his neck, and said angrily, if it weren't for them to be so ruthless, I won't tell you where they are so easily. Sneer. Nebula let out a mocking sneer. She didn't know what virtue the Predator was, but she didn't expose Peter Quill's lies. Betrayal in the Interstellar is so common. Will Die Pioneer's contact information is also handed over to me. What Peter Quill said was not very different from what Nebula knew, so she didn't suspect that he was telling lies, except for the last sentence. Star Jew handed over Kraft's telephone number, without saying a word. Let's go. After getting the position of Death Pioneer, Nebula decisively left here with the surrounding necromantic fleet. After making the infinite gems, Kraft decided to rest for a while. Anyway, the arsenal on Aurelius has been completed, with Angela's duplication and hellos, and it is completely possible to automatically produce those cannon fodder ships. So these days, I have been playing wildly with my 2 younger sisters and dogs. A group of them are now traveling on the famous Sandal Star. Brother, Peter Quill sent a message saying Ronan has come here. The Captain Red Queen, holding Kraft's hand in one hand and Sandal's traditional children's toy in the other, suddenly raised his head and whispered to Kraft. Tisk. These guys are really endless. Kraft in the salty fish season is very upset, he just wants to eat, drink and have fun now. If your brother is not interested, you might as well leave it to me. Angela patted her chest in excitement, slapped all over the place. Alright. Kraft nodded indifferently. Anyway, the Cross Pioneer was basically Angela's toy now, so just let her toss it. But Kraft somehow added, but be careful not to lose the Cross Pioneer. It's okay to re-knock it, although it is a little troublesome. The key is that the ingredients on it are gone for a while. No way to add. Don't worry, brother, I'm the captain. Angela, who got Kraft's consent, gave Roar a happy voice, and then the whole person fell silent and let Kraft lead her around. This was because she put most of her attention on the Cross Pioneer, the mechanical on the body side. Follow mode is turned on. After leaving the matter to Angela, Kraft continued to stroll around the Sandal Star. The environment of Sandal Star is very good, and it looks very similar to the Earth in all aspects. It is definitely after removing those aliens with different skin colors and shapes and more technological buildings. Aureli has a soft spot for those strange aliens. Holding the camera Kraft gave her, and seeing a different alien, he ran to take a picture. Thanks to Aureli's baby size and always cheerful attitude, those aliens who were photographed did not feel offended, but very cooperatively asked Aureli to take pictures. Brother, this thing tastes good. Quinn trot over and handed Kraft a bunch of things that looked like grilled squid, but this squid not only had a red light on its body, but its tentacles were still floating slowly. Kraft reached out and took the string of squids, and hesitation looked at Quinn. Big brother, believe me, it's really delicious. It tastes a bit like spicy noodles. Quinn gave Kraft a thumbs up and strongly recommended. In fact, Kraft is not that he doesn't believe in dogs, but that this squid seems to be too low in sand value. For these alien foods, Kraft naturally wanted to taste it. He had actually tried it a few times before, but most of the foods were really hard to describe. So Kraft handed the task to Quinn. After becoming a kobold, Quinn's taste became closer to humans, so the food he certified was in line with Kraft's taste. Out of trust in the dog, Kraft was cruel, closed his eyes and bit into it. The taste is really good. As Quinn said, it tastes a bit like spicy noodles, and because the tentacles of the squid are still alive, when chewing, it will produce bursts of twitches and jump with a little jump. The taste of sugar, it tastes an inexplicable pleasure. After swallowing one of the tentacles, Kraft's eyes lit up, and he quickly ate the squid in his hand. As expected of my dog, I have never let me down in terms of food recommendations. Licking his tongue contentedly, Kraft looked around, lowered his head and asked, "Where is Aureli?" Aureli is always full of energy and runs fast, so Kraft didn't expect her to stay by her side obediently from the beginning. But in order to prevent her from accidentally destroying Sandal, it is better to keep her within her sight. Quinn raised his head and sniffed, then pointed to the right and said, "Over there." Well, she seems to be back by herself. Actually, without Quinn's reminder, Kraft has heard Aureli's iconic laugh coming from a distance and getting closer. At the same time, her laughter seems to be mixed with someone's cursing grin. Voice. Ha 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 ha. Brother, look at it. A civet cat like Mr. Quinn. Aureli rushed to Kraft with a furry guy, offering him a treasure. I am not a civet cat, you disgusting little monster. Raised above his head by Aureli is a raccoon in clothes. He is waving his limbs and struggling hard at the moment, and is constantly spitting out swear words from his mouth. No swearing in front of my sister. Kraft crashed his head on the head of the raccoon in front of him. Don't think about it. You %hash it to hash at %%. I want to put your %hash into #% at and launch it. The smelly raccoon continued to swear words endlessly. Alale. Let this idiot raccoon shut up. To deal with this kind of guy, it is more effective to go to Aureli. Yes. Arale flipped his hand and pressed the smelly raccoon to the ground, and then began to tickle him. Ha 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 ha. Hurry up. Stop it. You. Ha 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 ha. Under Arale's weird power, the rocket raccoon had no room for resistance. She could only let her put her hands on her body, causing him to laugh wildly, and there was no time to continue swearing. I am Groot. Just when the rocket raccoon was laughing out of breath, a tall tree man suddenly rushed out from the side. His hands turned into movable branches and rolled over to Arale, who was tickling the rocket raccoon. Groot. This is a rare race. When Kraft was boring, he also saw some popular science about cosmic races. Among them, the Groot family was very distinctive, so he remembered it all at once. Ouch. Arale, who was curled up by the branches, was lifted by Groot, and she laughed happily after being taken aback for a while. Ha 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 ha. Lift high, lift a little higher. I'm Groot. Groot extended his arm again very obediently, and raised Arale up high. Ha 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 ha. Arale put his right hand on his forehead, and after looking around for a while, he easily broke free of the branches that entangled him, then jumped down from midair and hugged Groot's thigh. I'm Groot? Groot looked down at Arale suspiciously. Now it is your turn. Arale understood Groot's language magically, replied with a grin, and then threw him into the sky. Lift up. I am Groot. Accompanied by Groot's scream, his huge amounts of body turned into a meteor and disappeared into the sky in the blink of an eye. Where did you throw Groot? Rocket Raccoon jumped on Arale excitedly, grabbed her collar and roared. Oh, ah? Do you want to lift it up too? Arale grabbed the rocket with a backhand. What? I don't. However, before the rockets finished speaking, Arale grabbed him and threw him into the sky. Lift up. Ah 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 ah. While Kraft and others were still playing around on Sandal, the Black Spiral Dark Star had led the Necromancer fleet to approach the Cross Vanguard. Although the accuser Ronan was a very arrogant fellow, he still paid enough attention to the Death Vanguard who was able to fight back and forth with the Shia Empire. So after receiving the information that Nebula inquired about, Ronan took his men to the place where the Cross had said to stay, and Nebula also joined Ronan with the group of necromantic fleets she led. Find the enemy ship. Find the enemy ship. Harrow, who was in charge of the investigation, reported to Angela in time. Remove the optical camouflage, give them a shot first. Angela, who had already changed the shape of the pirate captain, waved the iron hook of her left hand and ordered. The Cross Pioneer with the invisible force field turned off appeared from the void, and directed at the huge amounts of dark stars in the distance, firing a volley of mega-particle cannons. Compared with the Dark Elf's T-shaped battleship, Dark Star is larger and stronger, so this round of shelling did not cause any damage to Dark Star, but it angered Ronan, the accuser inside. Send the necromantic fleet. Kill them for me. Originally, I wanted to contact the Death Vanguard and let them succumb. Ronan, who handed over the Cosmic Spirit Ball and Gamora, immediately flew into a rage. Regardless of whether he would accidentally injure Gamora, which does not exist inside, he ordered his fleet to launch the Cross Vanguard. Attack. A large number of necromantic fighters flew out of the Dark Star, and rushed towards the Cross Pioneer like a swarm of locusts. HMPH. Do you think our Death Vanguard has 2 or 3 kittens like before? Faced with the turbulent fleet, Angela unhurriedly flicked off the brim of her hat. During the transformation of Arales, the arsenal was the first building to be completed. While transforming Arales, the arsenal has been producing cannon fodder drones based on the Dark Elf blade fighters as prototypes. Therefore, although the fighters in the Cross Pioneer are not as large as the Necro fleet, they still have about 1/3 of the number. Send me a fleet of blades. The Sharp Blade is the name of those cannon fodder drones. Since the prototype is a Dark Elf blade fighter, the shape of the Sharp Blade is also made into a flat dagger-like shape, and since there is no need for a cockpit, in addition to the jet port at the end, the Sharp Blade basically, the entire fuselage is made of extremely hard metal. A sharp-edged spacecraft with a skull flag flew out of the Cross Pioneer and rushed up to meet the necromantic fleet. The light yellow light gathered on the sharp bow of the sharp-edged spacecraft, and then turned into arrow-shaped lights. The blade shot at Ronan's necromantic fleet. Not to be outdone, the necromancer fleet fired green light bullets, and the exchange of fire between the two sides instantly caused fireworks to ignite in the otherwise silent and gloomy universe. Since the positioning of the bladed spacecraft has been cannon fodder from the beginning, and the necromancer fleet is also a dead soldier-type force composed of Ronin with biochemicals, a large amount of battle damage occurred on both sides at the beginning, and the spaceships in the universe are rapidly decreasing. Although the unscientific bladed spacecraft in Dreamland technology has an extremely solid shell, the overall performance is actually not much different from those of the Necro fleet, and the eye-controlled spacecraft will not be better than those specially strengthened. Where is the strength of the people, so the battle losses of both sides are basically maintained at 1-to-1. Angela definitely wouldn't just watch her blade fleet fall like that, even if their function was used as cannon fodder in the first place. Raise the beam sail. Open the GN particle shield. Let's rush in. The Death Pioneer logo unfolded behind the mast of the Cross Pioneer, and at the same time a layer of fluorescent green particles wrapped the entire battleship inside. A large number of GN particles were ejected from the end of the Cross Pioneer and crashed into Ronan's Necro fleet. Among all bullets launched, the heralds in charge of the battle manipulated the weapons carried on the Cross Pioneer, shooting beams of particles and a large number of missiles, rushing across the battlefield. The Necromancer fleet, which originally had a numerical advantage, was instantly beaten to pieces because of the addition of the Cross. Give me to entangle that warship at all costs. In the Dark Star, Ronan immediately issued an order to make the Necromancer fleet launch a suicide attack. The Necromancer fleet, which was originally headless flies, was no longer entangled with Angela's blade fleet. They turned around and rammed the Cross Pioneer. At the same time, they launched a strange energy field together, using hundreds of thousands of dead ships. The power of the Spirit spacecraft involved the action of the Cross Pioneer. At the same time, the Dark Star, which had been hovering behind the battlefield, began to move, and the spiral hull began to rotate. The Dark Star became a black cuboid with huge amounts of blue and white energy following the lines on the surface of the ship. Gathered right in front of the Dark Star and turned into a giant beam, sweeping the battlefield ahead regardless of enemy or us. All the spaceships swept by the giant beam burst instantly, and the blue and white sword cut a gap of huge amounts of in the battlefield. Emergency alert! Emergency alert! A red light flashed inside the Cross Pioneer, and the harsh sirens sounded from every corner of the warship. However, the members of the at the moment battleship are all artificial intelligences, so there is no sense of tension at all. Hey, next is the racing game. Angela's avatar flashed, the pirate suit on her body was changed to a racing suit, and the steering wheel of a spaceship was simulated in front of her. Reaching out to hold the steering wheel in front of him, Angela pushed it forward fiercely, and at the same time activated the Trans-Am system of the GN solar furnace. A maroon light appeared on the surface of Cross Pioneer, and then the bow sank downward, dragging the red afterimage to break free from the constraints of the necromantic fleets, and at the same time just to avoid the giant beam shot by the Dark Star. Letting the remaining blade fleet continue to entangle with the Necro fleet, Angela drove the Cross Pioneer and quickly broke through Ronan's encirclement and fled away in the distance. Catch me. The Dark Star shapeshifting again, the hull twisted into the most suitable style for flight, and all the thrusters were turned to the maximum, chasing the Cross Pioneer. Regardless of the huge size of the Dark Star, its speed is really not slow. It is probably about the same as the speed of the Cross when it unfolds the beam sail. Definite is incomparable to the Cross, which is currently in overclocking mode, let alone it is said that there is a short fold over the hull card. It's just that Angela's intention was not to take off the Dark Star, but to fly its kite, so after breaking through the encirclement of the Necro fleet, she turned off the Trans-Am mode and hung the Dark Star far away. Asterisk. But it doesn't make much sense to just hang it like this, so Angela will throw a bunch of space mines, magnetic bombs, and even some useless scraps from the Cross Pioneer's farm from time to time, and launch them on the Dark Star, adding a bit of blockage to Ronan, who was chasing behind him. Now it's changed to an item match again. After staying with Aurelie for a long time, Angela has also become a lot more naughty. I am still alive. I am Groot. Rocket Raccoon and Groot suddenly sat up from the ground, groping their bodies up and down in shock, carefully checking whether they had missing arms or legs. Don't worry. Aurelie is very well measured. Brother, don't you feel bad when you say this? Quinn squinted at Kraft, whose face was not red and heartbeat, and spit out. Ha 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 ha. Aurelie didn't realize that the dog was actually mocking herself. She put her face in front of the rockets. Is it fun to lift high? How could it be fun? Rocket jumped up from the ground and pointed to Aurelie's nose to curse swear words, but when the swear words reached his mouth, he abruptly held back. I've confirmed the look in my eyes. I can't beat him, no matter how irritable the rockets are. They still have to be counseled when they should be counseled. Coward. Coward. Elale laughed loudly and sneered at the Rocket Raccoon. Try it yourself at this height. It's a person. No. It's a creature that will be scared to death, okay. His Uncle Rocket just couldn't bear this kind of stimulation. Before his head could react, his mouth had already started to refute. Fortunately, his fear of Aurelie was still there, and he didn't swear any bad words. Is it scary? Aurelie tilted his head, then squatted down. Definitely. Drink. Before Rocket's words fell, he felt the strong wind blowing, and the little girl named Aurelie disappeared before his eyes. Huh? Where did she go? The Rocket looked around and asked questioningly. I'm Groot. Groot pointed to the sky, and Rocket followed his fingers up and looked up. In the clear sky, a small black spot suddenly appeared, and it was getting bigger and bigger. Wow. The Rocket rolled on the ground and Groot flashed aside, and then only heard a loud noise behind him, followed by a violent vibration of the ground immediately under his feet. Ha 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 ha. It's so interesting. The two looked back, and the gray-headed Alalay crawled out of a bottomless pit, slapped the dust on his body and smiled cheerfully. Groot, I think I drank too much yesterday. The wine seems to have not woken up until now. The Rocket Raccoon has already begun to escape reality. This kind of thing, just get used to it. Quinn, who also received the animal transformation, still has a good impression of the Rockets. He stepped forward and patted the Rockets on the shoulder, comfortingly said. The Rockets looked up and down Quinn, and then hesitation said, we should not be of the same kind. Nonsense. I am a dog and you are a raccoon, how can you be of the same kind? I'm Groot. Oh, definitely, I know you are Groot. He casually dealt with Groot, who came over. The Rockets were about to continue chatting with Quinn about their transformation. However, at this time, a yellow light was projected from the sky and enveloped him, and his body couldn't help it. The ground floated into the air. Ha 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 ha. It's floating. Aurelie, who was also floating, waved her arms in midair and tried various swimming postures. Although she didn't move a bit, she still paddled there happily. Swimming, oh. Damn. The Rocket Raccoon, who had experienced it many times a long time ago, naturally understood what had happened, and he collapsed his shoulders helplessly. I have to find a way to escape again. This is the Rising Star Army. We arrested you on multiple charges of damaging public facilities and harassing the people. A warning sound from the new Star Corps sounded from the spacecraft projecting the bound light. Kraft, who was also drawn into the air by the light, looked at the spacecraft of the new Star Legion with interest. He was still very interested in Shandar's technology. But interested, he didn't want to go to Shandal's prison. So Kraft raised his right hand and activated the infinite gems hidden in his body. Guide Force Magic, Anti-Magic Realm, Complex. The red light sprinkled from above in an inverted spiral, covering all the spaceships of the Nova Legion. Under the coverage of the Anti-Magic Realm, the binding light of the Nova Legion immediately lost its effect. Wow. Feng Mo is really useful for the technology side, and the force magic is really a science. Kraft just gave it a try, and he didn't expect it to succeed all at once. Damn it. What happened? The members of the Rising Star Legion inside the spacecraft were in a commotion. They found that not only did they restrain the light, but also other weapons and combat functions such as shields seemed to have lost their effect. Is it energy interference? No. If it is energy interference, the spacecraft should also lose power, and communication equipment is also good, but now only the combat system has a problem. Contact headquarters immediately. We need support. Now spread out first to prevent prisoners from escaping. After a brief panic, the members of the Nova Legion whose weapons were blocked by Kraft immediately regained their composure. Roman Day, who led the team, quickly issued the order, and several Nova spacecraft quickly retreated, surrounding Kraft from a distance. Them. What have you done? Rocket Raccoon looked at Kraft in surprise. Nothing, just a little magic, not worth mentioning. Kraft waved his hand with a bleak expression. He didn't worry about the Rising Star Legion. Not to mention the presence of Aurelie. Even if Kraft didn't want to get too stiff with Sandal, he could still use Reality Gem's illusion ability. Run quietly. He didn't run directly now, mainly because he wanted to find a chance to see if he could take the opportunity to take a new starfighter back and take it apart and play. However, after waiting for a while, not only did the new Star Legion's reinforcements not come, even the spaceships surrounding them suddenly turned around and left. What's happening here? Kraft looked suspiciously at the Rocket Raccoon, who was said to have been captured by the Rising Star Corps more than 20 times. This is the first time I have encountered this situation, man. Rocket Raccoon is also confused. Brother, it seems that I was controlling the cross flying indiscriminately, leading Ronan and the others to the vicinity. Angela, who had been lowering her head and not speaking before, suddenly raised her head and spit out her little tongue to explain to Kraft. I see. After Angela gave a brief explanation of her previous operation, Kraft pondered for a moment, and then slapped her thigh abruptly. It just so happens that the new Star Legion has also joined the battle, so it's better to get rid of Ronan here. You can also just find the opportunity to help me catch 2 new starfighters. As for Ronan's necromantic fighters, Angela had already captured several of them and placed them in Nakuri of the Cross. Good idea. I'll do it now. Angela was also excited, and then controlled the Cross Pioneer to adjust its course, and flew straight in the direction of Shandel. The accuser Ronan is now very upset. Originally, he thought it would be easy for him to go out and solve a group of cosmic pirates himself, but who would have thought that this cosmic pirate, called Death Pioneer, was not very strong, but it was extremely slippery. Not to mention the speed of the spacecraft, the thief still has a lot of miscellaneous methods, and even put cow dung on his beloved Dark Star. Not very harmful, but very insulting. So even if Luo Nanming knew that Death Vanguard was slipping away, he couldn't help but want to catch up with them. Then the Dark Star was taken by the Cross Pioneer and rushed into the encirclement of the new Star Legion. Alright, just take advantage of this opportunity and destroy Shandel together. Ronan didn't stop doing 2 things, and decided to fight with the Rising Stars. The necromantic fleet and the spaceships of the Rising Star Corps are fighting together, and the Dark Star is still thinking about driving the Cross to run. Damn it, if it weren't for my blade fleet had been wiped out, I must make you look good. Angela murmured angrily while controlling the Cross Pioneer to deal with Ronan and the new Star Legion's attack. At first, the new Star Legion thought that Death Vanguard and Ronan were in the same group, so they attacked them indiscriminately. Naturally, Angela couldn't swallow this breath, and began to fight back without saying anything. But fortunately, the people of the new Star Legion were not blind. After fighting with the Cross for a while, they found that it seemed to be chased by the Dark Star, so they quickly stopped the attack on it and began to contact the above members of the Vanguard of Death. What are you doing? Fight if you want. I won't be afraid of you. When a little girl in a pirate suit appeared on the screen, the commander of the Rising Stars Corps was dumbfounded. Well, I'm looking for Lady Red Queen of Death Vanguard. The commander hesitated, and said to Angela. Nonsense. The old lady is the Red Queen. Ah. By the way, my brother said that he can't call himself an old mother, cough. Deal with the big black twist behind you. Tell me if you have something. Ahem, Red Queen, you should be chased by Ronan. Then why don't we join hands to deal with him? You should know his grudge with us Shandel. After being confused, the commander thought Angela was some kind of alien with a long juvenile period or only a juvenile form. He adjusted his expression and suggested. Who said I was being chased? Angela grinned, and then spread her hands. I'm just playing with him. By the way, I just grab a few spaceships from you. Having said that, Angela suddenly tilted her head. Ah, the number seems to be almost enough. During the time they were speaking, the heralds had already collected a lot of the wreckage of the Nova spacecraft from the battlefield and captured several complete Nova fighters in accordance with Angela's orders. As for the pilots inside, Angela still humanely stuffed them into the landing module and launched them onto the Xander star. Didn't you say that you want to join forces? I'm going to solve the Dark Star next, and those flies like necromantic fleets will be handed over to you. How about? Do you really have a solution to the Dark Star? The commanders of the new Star Legion expressed doubts about this. Even if they dispatched all the new Star Legions, they can't guarantee that Ronan's Dark Star can be solved. What can Death Pioneer, a lone warship, do? You don't need to worry about this. After the end, the Dark Star is the spoils of our Death Vanguard. This must be agreed in advance. Definitely, if you can do it, it is logically definitely. Although the commander of the new Star Legion is still skeptical, but Death Pioneer takes the initiative to meet the Dark Star and he can't ask for it, and at any rate it is the cosmic pirate who forced the Shia Empire to have to negotiate. Maybe he can give him something. Surprise. After finishing the call with the commander of the new Star Legion, Angela's machine body, who was still staying at Xander Star, raised his head. Alalay, can you help my sister knock down that black guy? But don't use your good artillery, it won't work if it is completely blown up. Angela pointed to the Dark Star in the sky, which was almost the size of the speaker, and said to Aurelie. No problem. Hold on me. Aurelie beat her chest with her fist, then looked around, and at a glance she caught a metal sculpture not far away. After trotting to the metal statue, Aurelie hugged it and pulled it up from the ground easily. I'm Groot. Yes Groot, I saw it too. Rocket Raccoon rubbed his eyes, once again wondering if he hadn't sobered up yet. After all, Seeing a little girl who is not much taller than herself lifted up a 3-meter-high metal sculpture easily, it doesn't seem like something that can happen in reality. Areli held up the metal sculpture, raised one foot, leaned back in an exaggerated manner, looked at the dark star in the sky for a while, and then suddenly threw the sculpture in his hand towards it. I lost it. The metal sculpture disappeared from Areli's hand in an instant. Almost at the same time, a very conspicuous spark burst from the dark star of the license plate file size in the sky, and the rocket saw a dark star with a hole in the middle. The number fell slantingly from the sky. Good job, Areli. Angela ran to Areli and stroked her head happily. He. I was praised again. No matter how many times I see it, the fighting power of Sister Areli is so real. Quinn sighed with hands on his hips. Where is this so real? Even if I am drunk, I can't see such exaggerated scenes. By the way, I must be drunk. You can't fool me. The rocket raccoon pointed at the dark star slowly falling from the sky and roared at Quinn incoherently. It's rare and weird. This is just a routine operation for Sister Areli. Quinn glanced at the excited rocket. His face was calm, even with a slight sense of superiority. He was a well-informed dog. I'm Groot. No, Groot. I must be drunk. I won't believe anything you say. Rocket refused to believe what was happening before him. He found a place to lie down, closed his eyes and said, I want to sleep well. When I wake up, the world will return to normal. I'm Groot. Groot scratched his wooden head, looked back and forth between the dark star in the sky and the rocket a few times, and then lay down beside him as well as the rocket. Even a wooden head like Groot felt that the scene just now seemed a bit too exciting. In fact, not only Rocket Raccoon and Groot, but Ronan, the accuser, also doubted his life at this time. What just happened? Why did I just blink my eyes and there was such a big hole on the dark star? Ronan held his big hammer, his small eyes filled with big doubts. When the huge amounts of dark star fell down with thick black smoke due to an unknown attack, the people in the New Star Legion and even the entire Sandal who were watching the battle were surprised and happy. The good news is that the accuser Ronan, a war lunatic, was shot down. What was shocking was, the dark star was about to hit the Sandal Star. The New Star Legion was anxious, and quickly allocated a part of the manpower, abandoned the Necromancer Legion that was fighting with them, flew under the dark star, used the energy shield to form a giant net, and gave the falling dark star to the pocket. Live. Huh. Just so, it saves me trouble. Angela was thinking about how to get the dark star back, but the New Star Legion spontaneously came to help. Sensible. But it wasn't enough to get rid of the dark star. You had to get rid of the accuser Ronan, the boss of the house. So Angela activated her spare machine, ran to the bow of the cross, and jumped down. At the same time, the statue of the goddess of victory under the bow opened her eyes, glowing green particles ejected from her golden tutu, and the goddess of victory flew away from the cross vanguard and flew towards the dark star, where it happened to be caught. Angela fell from above. Huge amounts of the goddess of victory fell on the dark star, and instantly split into hundreds of normal human file-size liquid robots, scattered around and began to clean up the viable power in the dark star, and by the way, looked for the whereabouts of the accuser Ronan. The ordinary crew on the dark star are not the opponents of the goddess of victory at all. Hundreds of liquid robots are slaughtering quickly on the dark star, whether they are ordinary Kree crews or manufactured biochemicals. Among these small golden goddesses everything in front of him was like a mustard, easily torn to pieces. Death Pioneer. I must break your corpses into pieces. With a hammer smashing a small goddess to pieces, Ronan roared angrily. Since meeting these cosmic pirates, his plans have been problematic one by one. The cosmic spirit orb was taken away, Gamora was captured, and now even his dark star was shot down. Ronan's hatred of Death Vanguard, a private armed force, at the moment has basically been equalized with Shandal's old counterpart. Just when Ronan was incompetent and furious, the small goddess that was smashed into pieces did not regroup to continue fighting with him, but shape-shifted a piece of fragment into a hummingbird, followed Ronan from a distance, and turned to Angie. Pulling synchronously sends his position. So Ronan was quickly stopped by a blonde girl in a pirate costume. Are you Ronan the accuser? Angela waved the scimitar in her hand and asked knowingly. Ronan, who was in a bad mood, had no interest in answering Angela at all. He raised the hammer in his hand to poke Angela into the air, and launched a shockwave to fly her out, and then he planned to continue to clean up the golden stars inside the dark star. Robot. Wow. You are so cruel to children too. You really are a badass. Angela got up from the ground, picked up the pirate hat that had fallen aside and put it back on herself, glaring at Ronan with her hands on her hips. Who are you? Only then did Ronan begin to face the little girl who appeared inexplicably. His blow was not something that anyone could take unscathed. My name is Angela Lee. Angela flicked the brim of her hat and raised her head proudly. You can also call me the Red Queen. Captain of Death Pioneer. Although the appearance of Angela and others has always been rather mysterious, the captain of the Red Queen is still relatively famous. After all, when Death Vanguard is dealing with other people, he basically negotiates in the name of the Red Queen. Ronan didn't care if the little girl in front of him was really red. He gritted his teeth and waved the big hammer in his hand, throwing one after another shockwave towards Angela. As long as the members of Death Vanguard have to die. The warhammer in Ronan's hand is not an ordinary thing. Although it looks primitive, it is actually a high-tech weapon made by the Kree. It can not only release shockwave, but also energy-absorbing, reorganize materials, and control gravity. Wait, its power will never lose to Asgard's Mjolnir. It's just that the name is a little bit stretched. It's called a universal weapon. However, no matter how powerful the power of the universal weapon is, it is still not enough to see in front of Angela's mechanical body. Even the weakened version of Aurelie will not talk about physics with others. Hey. Drink. Ha. Angela waved her small fist and smashed all the flying shockwaves. Then she rushed towards Ronan with her short legs. When she was about to approach him, she kicked her feet on the ground and straightened. His body slammed into Ronan's abdomen. The short-legged running speed was so fast that Ronan didn't have time to react at all, and was hit by Angela's head hammer on his stomach. Boom. Ronan, who was knocked out by Angela, broke through the wall of the spacecraft and fell into the next room. How can it be? The warhammer in his hand stood up from the mess. Ronan looked incredulous. His body was strengthened by Kree technology, and its strength was not much worse than that of the Dark Star originally. But with Angela's hammer just now, not only was his internal organs shaken, but his bones were also broken. If Ronan's resilience were not strong enough, he could only lie on the ground and wait for death. Go to death for me. The warhammer in his hand pointed forward, and Angela's two short legs snapped into the floor. Hey whoosh. Hey whoosh. Angela pulled her legs out of the floor nonchalantly, but when she stepped on the ground next to her, her short legs sank again. Wow. Fighting with a child is a shame. My brother said, using magic means is cheating. Angela frantically accused Ronan of being unruly with her hands on her hips, even though she actually knew that Ronan was not using magic. Ronan didn't care what Angela said, but another shockwave launched towards Angela. Boom. Angela, who was nailed to the ground, couldn't avoid it, and was hit by shockwave again. Ah. My hat. Although Angela was still unscathed, the pirate hat above her head was blown off, and because she was unable to move, she could only watch her beloved hat fly into the back passage. Just do you use magic? Angela snorted, straightened her hands, and pointed her palms at the blue alien in front of her. Look at the move. Guidance magic thunder of judgment. She still remembered that the Dark Star was the trophy planned by Death Pioneer, so she used a lightning attack with a small damage range. However, the thunder of judgment released by Angela did not cause any harm to Ronan. When he hit the warhammer on the ground, a translucent shield protected him, and the lightning hit it like raindrops. Falling into the lake just made the shield shake slightly. After blocking Angela's trial thunder, Ronan waved the hammer in his hand, and an electric light was thrown out of the hammer by him and hit Angela's body. Although she was still unharmed, her hair became a very funny explosive head. This is obviously another setting problem related to Aurelie. Yeah. Angela obviously couldn't accept this setting. She screamed and pulled her hair a few times, but the explosive head stayed firmly on her head. I am angry. Angela stared at Ronan threateningly, her two small fists clenched tightly, and her body leaned back in an exaggerated manner. Hiss. Angela took a deep breath, and then she didn't bother to care about what the Dark Star would be destroyed. How are you? As an Angela mechanical body from the same source as Aurelie, she is naturally good at you, but just like speed and power, it has a lot of discounts compared to Aurelie. But even so, Angela's hello cannon is not something Ronan, the Kree who is still bound by science, can resist. The orange light cannon pierced the shield Ronan summoned again, and also shattered the warhammer he was blocking in front of him, and then blasted through his body in the layers of walls behind him. There was another hole in the number. It's ironic. Ronan looked down at the big hole in his chest, staggered 2 steps and fell to his knees, with a very complicated expression on his face. Doubt, annoyance, unwillingness, ridicule. There are so many. But with the passing of his life, Ronan's expression on his face gradually calmed down, His body swayed a few times, and he fell to the ground.